What is up, everyone? Chris Geo here, coming to you from Beyond the Veil. We're sitting around hanging out this morning, and Sheree and I were just getting some conversation between ourselves and figured we would loop you guys and gals into the convo. We're going to do some open lines a little bit later in the broadcast. 612-398-0600 is the call-in number. I will announce that a little bit later, and of course, it's at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, too, so you can always find the call-in number there. I think we have 833 BTV Tribe too, but I don't know if that's connected to do that. So you can try 833 BTV Tribe as well. But anyways, it's going to be kind of a mixed bag today. We were looking at some of the comments that we were getting in the Patreon. We've got a lot of private messages in Patreon, and I want to apologize for not getting back to our Patreons as far as private messages go. They're just coming in so abundantly at patreon.com/BTV Tribe. Thank you all for the love and the support, the super chats, everything you guys and gals have been sending. It's been really, really, really inspiring. And we had a friend come over yesterday, and oh man, the guy was just so inspiring. I mean, we just talked about life and politics and business and where things are going, and he actually clued me in a little bit on how he's still doing well in the stock market despite the political atmosphere. And I was like, wow, I kind of gave up in 2021, but he gave me some inspiration and kind of lit a new fire in me, and gave me a little bit of that very dangerous thing, which is hope. And so, of course, yesterday was the midterms. We did an awesome show yesterday. I don't mean to pat ourselves on the back, but wow. I rewatched the show. Sometimes I'll rewatch our shows. And it's something I've done over the last several years, because I'm always like trying to fine tune how the shows flow, and, critiquing myself. And if you go back to our earlier shows from like November 5th, 2009, I sounded terrible. And then I kind of trained my voice and, did stuff like that. And when we used to have guests on, which we need to start doing again, a lot of times I'd miss what the guests were talking about because I'm working mixers, I'm working microphones, I'm working camera changers, all kinds of stuff like that. So I missed that. And so going back and listening to some of our shows is actually like me hearing it for the first time, because I'm actually focused on the show instead of focused on 10 different things plus trying to drive the broadcast as well. But today's guest is the BTV Tribe. So we're going to start out with comments. We're going to go into open lines, and who knows what else. I do want to comment, obviously, on the midterms. So I'll start out by doing that. Cherie is going through right now some of the Patreon comments and the YouTube comments as well. If you guys and gals want to leave questions in the chat as well, I want to make this more of like a kind of hangout than anything else. I see one of our sponsors is in the chat, and Alyssa has been on top of it. Thank you very much, Alyssa. Alyssa, I just want to say I love you so much. Like, really, like, from the bottom of our hearts, you're so freaking awesome. You're there every single show to moderate the chat room. You are so awesome. We went to the same high school together. We have the same energy, same vibe, and I don't think I take time to say thank you enough to our BTV Tribe and people like Alyssa who are constantly helping. But one of our sponsors, 18sex.xyz, is in the chat, and we seem to be getting a lot of these sponsors here. I don't know where they're coming from, but it's like, finegirlsnow.xyz, finegirls.online, things like that. So they're all coming in to get the gnosis from the BTV Tribe. I think what happened is when we did that show, 10 things that drive women crazy, not drive them crazy, but like 10 subtle things that make women go wild. It might have triggered that as like, oh, this is a channel that talks about that kind of stuff, so we're going to go spam their chat room. But Alyssa, thank you for staying on top of that. We really, really, really appreciate it. But I think it's funny when the bots are coming through, and there are so many loving people in the chat room, and I just want to say thank you. I don't remember the last time we banned somebody, and that's such a great thing because it's been so free flowing, and everybody's so loving. opinions that differ. I love opinions that differ. That's what's challenging, and it challenges, I should say, and it helps consciousness to grow. Whereas when you're in an echo chamber, there's no room for growth. And so I'd like to hear some opinions that differ, and that's why I always take opinions that are differing to heart. Well, I don't take them to heart. Well, let me just say this: I take them seriously in terms of reflecting upon them, like Elon Musk. I talked about Elon Musk in a couple different shows and said, I think the guy, might be up to something good. He might be the real deal. A lot of people said that I don't trust Elon Musk. I don't trust Elon Musk. And I said, okay, let me examine this, because I am right here eye to eye with each and every one of you out there. That's the great thing about BTV, is there's no hierarchy here. We're the teachers and the students at the same time. Y'all are the teachers and y'all are the students at the same time too. And I drew this inspiration from way back in like 2013. I was watching this Buddhist guy, or he was Hindu or something like that. And it was a bunch of New Agers, and they were at like some yoga retreat or something like that. And the guy was sitting on top of this couch, and he was sitting like Indian style, like looking down upon people and like talking to them. And I was like, why don't you get down and talk to people face to face? Why do you have to, number one, wear all that shit all over your face. Number two, wear these stupid freaking outfits to make you look like you're some kind of, religious figure and all this. And number three, why aren't you talking to people face to face? And so for the past, almost 10 years now, I kind of adopted that stance that we're the teachers and the students, and so are each and every one of you. And that's why I value our BTV tribe so much, because you all are teachers out there. You teach us, you teach others in the chat. I'm sure in your day-to-day life, you're teachers and you're also students too. And I think at the core of it, that's what BTV is all about. It's about being the teacher and the student at the same time. And so thank you so much for helping us grow. And I'm not talking about the channel or anything like that. I'm talking about us as individuals, challenging us to reflect in 360 degrees and grow from that. And as somebody mentioned yesterday, Elon Musk may very well be pushing everybody over to Twitter to bring in Neuralink. I never thought about that perspective, but because so many of the BTV tribe were like, hey, I don't trust Elon Musk, I said, okay, well, let's examine this 360 degrees. And I hope that's not the case. I really don't. I hope that he's the real deal, and I hope that he's doing this for the preservation of free speech. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on. That's where my energy is going. But as I said yesterday, I'm not going to follow anybody blindly. And as I said yesterday as well, the left and right are all the same. It's all same deep state bullshit. When Trump came in, he was something different. And it took me 2 years to start supporting him, because I saw his policies. I saw how the mainstream media was attacking him over and over and over again, and attacking him for very arbitrary things. If they had some real dirt on him, they would unleash it, but they didn't. All they did was had name calling, ridiculing, sound bites, taking sound bites out of context, so on and so forth. And then his policies were what I would like to see this country run as. And as a matter of fact, back in like 2010, I wrote up a little document. I hate to use the word manifesto, but that's what I called it at the time. It's not like, some kind of manifesto before, some kind of event or anything like that. I was just thinking, if I ran the world, this is what I would do. I would impose higher tariffs on imports, and I would revitalize United States industries. I would encourage tech companies to bring their workforces back to the United States by imposing those tariffs on those imports. That way they can't move the jobs overseas and do cheap labor over there and then come over here and sell us these products that they're manufacturing over there for like $60, like for an iPhone, and then sell it to us for like $1,200, $1,300. And Trump followed a lot of that. I mean, I know he didn't read my Facebook post from 2010, 2011, and then follow that. I'm just saying that he was in line with a lot of the things that I was talking about. But as I said, I lean more towards libertarian. But as I'm watching the midterms, I'm realizing the libertarians are actually hurting the situation here. There were some races that were really, really close. And as I said yesterday, I'll pull up the clip. We see races 51 to 49. 51 to 49. And that is a clear indication, in my humble opinion, that something is amiss, because it's very easy to flip 49 to 51. We've seen presidential elections like that. And as I'm watching the midterms, I'm watching the House, I'm watching the Senate, I'm seeing a lot of 49 to 51 again, like so many that it's so transparent. And not only that, but we still don't know who's won in certain areas. I mean, we used to have what was called election day. Now we have election days, weeks and months. And I can't believe, I was even reading an article yesterday, and it was saying, the Democrats look like they're not going to take the House or the Senate, but they still have a lot of mail-in ballots and late ballots that haven't been counted yet. And I was like, man, this is another massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out, where did it come from? And I can't believe that it's being repeated again. But I guess that's just the way the system is. And I did want to speculate yesterday a little bit on if this is all one big agenda that was, moving in a particular direction. I didn't get around to actually making that point, but as somebody that looks at everything 360 degrees, I have to ask myself, was Trump put in as a good guy who was supposed to, make America great again, make things better, bring peace, prosperity, so on and so forth, and then hand it back over to the Dems or the deep state? I get stuck calling them Dems, but it's really deep state. As I explained yesterday, it's left, right, all the same cabal. And then have everything pushed so far left with the woke culture that people get tired of it, and then it swings the pendulum the other way. And even New York Post right now is reporting that DeSantis is the future. And I'm really skeptical of DeSantis. And I've never been a Republican. I've never been a Democrat. I've voted in one election in my entire life, and that was in 2020. So was that always the plan, to bring somebody in like that and do kind of like the bait and switch on us? Or did Trump really push everything so far past the parameters that they had set up for a win, and so he was able to get in? They didn't like that. They're attacking him left and right still to this day. He threw a wrench into their clockworks, but at the same time, that was temporary, and now the agenda is back, and their answer to that is to bring in DeSantis, to bring in a Handmaid's Tale theocracy for all intents and purposes, and swing things way the other way. So I don't trust anything that's going on right now. I was disappointed with the midterm results, but I think that the GOP is going to take the House and the Senate. But the thing is, the GOP is not Trump. Trump changed the GOP, but right now what they're doing is they're attacking Trump for some of the GOP candidates that didn't win, and they're saying DeSantis is the future of the GOP. Trump and Make America Great Again was something different, and he did change the face of the GOP. But are they trying to change it back to DeSantis? And that's that's still one of their guys. I haven't done any background research on DeSantis. I don't know too much about him. So all I know is what I've seen over the last couple of years. But I know one thing for sure. He's a politician, where Trump wasn't. So I'm not putting my faith in any party at this point. However, the GOP seems like it's the less of two evils at this point. But I can see how they're trying to chip away at that Trump influence and bring in something else for the GOP. And some of these races, I might talk about this, I might not, were 49 to 51 or close to that. And some GOP governors, senators, congressmen lost by 11,000 votes, by 12,000 votes, which went to the Green Party, which went to the Libertarian Party as well. And if they would have just voted in red, then we would have a much bigger red wave than what we're seeing right now. But again, is a red wave necessarily a good thing? If you go back to the year 2000, no, it's not. It's the cabal. That's George Bush. It's George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., so on and so forth. The Dems, the libs, very crystal clear, transparent, so on and so forth. I want Trump's GOP. That's what I want. And if we don't get that, and we might not get that, then I'm washing my hands of the situation. And I just can't get on board with anything. Because, as I said, Trump has a proven track record of freedom, prosperity, and no war, peace, and making deals. And, at the end of the day, the United States is a business, and that's exactly what it is. And when we have a really strong CEO like Trump, he's going to run the country like a business, and everybody's going to prosper. But I'm not going to be bait and switched. So let me run a quick little intro. This is a little WTF bra thing. Y'all have seen it before, but I just figure it's really relevant to what's going on right now. We might get into a little bit of the midterms, and then after that, Cherie is right now compiling comments, questions, all that, and of course we'll open up the phone lines in a little bit, 612-398-0600. So we'll be right back.
Thank you. This may be the most important speech I've ever made.
Well, it's about time!
It was a massive dump, and to this day everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow, in the Senate, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Massive dump, and to this day everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow, but I went from leading by a lot to losing by a little. We used to have what was called Election Day. Now we have election days, weeks and months. Lots of bad things happened. What can I say? Wow, it was a massive dump. Our country cannot live with this election. Right now, we're worried about the present and what went on with an election that we won without question. In Pennsylvania, large amounts of gum. All over the country, gum. Nevada and California said gum. Right here in Washington. It was a massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow, in the Senate. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow. But I went from leading by a lot to losing by a little. So many got ballots, they didn't even know what they were for. And again, so many received more than one ballot. In some cases, more than two ballots. If you were a Democrat, we're gonna fix up your ballot, make sure it's perfect. If you were a Republican, don't even talk about it. Can you believe this? The hardest thing I have to do is dump. When they're irregular, dump. Let's go on to the next dump. It's because they know they are hiding. It's a massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow, in the Senate. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from. Massive dump, wow. But I went from leading by a lot to losing by a little.
All right.
The sky's so far away tonight, but I can't lose this one. Get a bright of the falling night. Thought that I was fit to fight for us to be. You gave me life for loving me. Tell me where did we go so wrong?
Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, across the nation, around the world, I'm Chris Geo. I'll be taking you beyond the veil this evening. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and co-pilot, twin flame, Mrs. Geo.
Good evening, or good morning, everyone.
I wanted to apologize. The last couple of shows I forgot to introduce you, and that's because I've been doing these, little monologues, opening it up.
Yeah, opening
that way,
up.
when people come to YouTube, they're not hit directly with the intro.
Exactly.
And, it gets into conversation, and then by the time I run the intro, I forget to introduce you.
Oh, it's okay.
It's happened on a couple of shows. I wanted to apologize apologize to you first and
Aw,
foremost.
I love you, baby.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am feeling fantastic and better than I have in years, to be honest.
awesome.
Yeah, so I'm
Awesome.
doing good.
All right. So, were you still going through comments and things like that?
Almost, but I've got several really good
Okay,
ones.
because I have a few from the chat that I wanted to address really
Go
quick.
ahead and address those, and I'll pick up some Patreon
Okay,
ones too.
awesome.
Yeah.
So today, like I said, the show is all about you guys and gals. So whatever you guys want to talk about. Karen asked if it's going to be all politics. It's going to be whatever you guys want. So,
Yeah, whatever you guys
throw some comments in the chat. We'll take some calls a little bit later in the broadcast and kind of go from there. So, I'm hearing Trump will be making some kind of huge announcement on Tuesday, 11:15. Thinking more than announcing his 24 POTUS run. What do you think? Ooh, that's interesting. Never thought about it from that perspective. We were just thinking it was going to be the POTUS run, but yeah, he is making a big announcement on the 15th. He wanted to wait till after the midterms, but what they're trying to do right now in the media is basically slam him. New York Post, who broke Hunter Biden's laptop story and was banned from Twitter, and as a matter of fact, Zuckerberg was in front of Congress, and he testified in front of Congress that the FBI went to Zuckerberg and told him there's going to be some Russian disinformation coming through about Hunter Biden's laptop. Start taking measures to censor it. That is direct government interfering with the freedom of speech. So they've always been what's the term that I'm looking for? Oh God, I don't know why I can't think of this term. But they've been contracting out. That's not the term I'm looking for, but they've been contracting out their suppression of the Constitution to private corporations. So that's exactly what they're doing. Tom, thank you for the super chat. I can't see the question
Tom.
just yet, but I'll get to it for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zuckerberg, he said on Joe Rogan that the FBI came to him and told him to censor the niche. Thank you for the super tattoo. I think that's a niche. All I'm seeing is just the little things at the top because I'm trying to stay on these comments here where that I want to go over real quick. But Zuckerberg was on with Joe Rogan, I think, and he was saying, yeah, the FBI came and they told me to censor this. And so government is directly interfering with the freedom of speech. So anyways, I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, big announcement. Yeah, he may run. There may be more. I really don't know. Okay, so another comment. Trump is dirty too. Here's the thing. I don't really find that much dirt on Trump. If they had real dirt on Trump, they wouldn't have to make up fake stuff. That's the way that I see it. The Russian collusion stuff, that was a big hoax. Everything was a big hoax. I mean, do you remember that Russian disinfo, supposedly, not Russian disinfo, leftist disinfo, that he was in Russia and he had call girls giving him golden showers.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, first of all, what business of that is anybody?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just
crude. Yeah. And second of all, more power to him. If that's what he's into, I'm not going to judge somebody. And this is the same party who's all about LGBT and free sexuality and, all kinds of stuff like that. You and I were talking about that earlier and how a lot of people are uncomfortable with their sexuality. And it originally started, like we were talking on the show yesterday, about just acceptance of one another no matter what, and getting rid of this religious-based programming of judging people for their personal life choices. And then that was weaponized and politicized and turned into a system of control. So at the same time, I asked myself, if that was true, what's the big deal? I don't care. Like, I don't care what he does in his bedroom. More power to him, whatever. But, they were making stuff up like that. So if he was so dirty, no pun intended, why would they have to make stuff up? I mean, do the real deal thing. As far as the income taxes go, they're like, we want to see your income taxes. We want to see your income taxes. And it's like, what other president has shown their income taxes? When, like, your income and your finances are like your own personal thing. Like, why is it all of a sudden that he needs to show his income taxes? And then they released one income tax, I think, and he paid like $500 in taxes. And I applauded him for it. I was like, more power to you. While everybody was like, oh my God, he's not paying his fair share, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, that is a smart business. businessman. And that is somebody that knows how to take his money, take his profits, move them around legally, find loopholes, all of that in the tax code, and minimize their tax liability. Any good business owner or businessman is going to do that. A good CPA is going to do that. So I applauded him for two reasons. Number one, because as Ronald Reagan's Grace Commission said, they did the Grace Report, and you should read this. And I'm quoting it almost verbatim, but not word for word. So, don't quote me on it. But they said if the people found out that their tax dollars, their income tax, is going to government waste and into the pockets of private Federal Reserve bankers, they would stop paying income tax tomorrow. And as we played on the show yesterday, one of these big MSNBC reporters were talking about how the word inflation is not in the normal lexicon, and that we, the people of America, are so stupid we don't know what inflation is. And I was like, oh my God, this is asinine. And she was going on to say that the GOP taught people the word inflation, and it's like, no, you understand inflation. Everybody does. I think everybody does. So the way inflation works is the Federal Reserve prints more money. The more money in circulation, the less the dollar is worth. And so what they do is they trade the dollar. They trade treasury bonds. They create these pieces of paper called treasury bonds. They trade them to the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, and that comes back as dollars with interest. And so now, you borrow $1 from the Federal Reserve with a treasury bond, and you owe the Federal Reserve $1.10. Let's just say, whatever the interest rate is, $1.08. If it's 8% interest or whatever. Where does that 8 cents come from on that initial dollar to pay back the Federal Reserve? If the Federal Reserve is trading treasury bonds for dollars, it's got to come back from the Federal Reserve. So we're in a constant perpetual state of debt by having a banking system like this. So what the Dems did is they printed $7 trillion, put it into circulation, and now it devalued the currency. And so that's why these crazy spending bills need to stop. And this is why we want to see a red House and a red Senate to stop these crazy, insane spending bills that are leading to inflation. So everybody knows what inflation is. So your income tax goes into the pockets of private Federal Reserve bankers to pay back the interest from the Treasury Department trading out bonds for dollars. If the federal government just stuck to its 3 primary objectives or purposes, which is to defend our borders, to print money, and ensure the states are not violating the freedom of people. Those are the 3 functions of federal government. If they stuck to that, we wouldn't have this problem with the Federal Reserve and all the debt and so on and so forth. Yet we have given all of our income taxes, sometimes upwards of 30% of what people make, that don't go to any government functions whatsoever. They don't go to healthcare. They don't go to social services. They don't go to anything like that. Your income tax goes into the pockets of private Federal Reserve bankers. Schools are funded by housing tax on property. Your property taxes go to pay schools. Roads are funded by gasoline tax. There's so many different taxes that people pay. And just because people aren't paying an income tax or lowering their tax liability, it doesn't mean that they're not paying taxes. Amazon, for example, when they were up in New York and AOC ran them out, and they were going to bring 150,000 jobs over there. What they wanted is they wanted a tax break over the course of like 10 years. I don't remember, 5 years, something like that, of a couple $2 billion. And AOC was like, hell no, we're not going to let you come over here and open up a campus in our district, if you want that kind of a tax break over the course of all this time. And but the fact of the matter is that they would be bringing in sales tax revenue for New York. They would be bringing in new jobs. The average job over there was like $80,000 a month. And they'd be paying taxes on all the stuff that they're doing in New York. Local taxes, sales taxes, licensing taxes, luxury taxes, all kinds of stuff like that. AOC completely destroyed her district by doing that. And the liberals were applauding her because, that's capitalism and, so on and so forth. But just because Jeff Bezos pays no taxes because he knows how to reinvest his money back into his business doesn't mean that he doesn't pay taxes. He pays employment tax. He pays sales tax. He generates sales tax, all kinds of taxes like that. Same with Trump. Trump, same thing. He has to pay sales tax. He has to, anything he sells has sales tax. There's hotel tax that needs to be paid on his hotels, employee tax, so on and so forth. So there was a tax return that came out, and it's after making close to $1 billion, he wound up paying $500 in income tax. I was like, more power to you. Bezos and Trump pay very, very little in corporate income tax. Well, according to the Grace Commission, corporate income tax directly goes to fund the military. And so it goes to fund the war in Iraq, goes to fund the war in Afghanistan, goes to fund now the war in Ukraine and Russia. And so the way I saw it is that he wasn't contributing to the war. Because when you look at it from the Grace Commission, and, mind you, the Grace Commission was back in the 80s. So that was a long time ago. Things might have changed a little bit, but I don't think so. I think the spending is pretty close. Corporate income tax goes to fund invasions of other countries. So people who are minimizing their corporate taxes by reinvesting in their business and finding loopholes and so on and so forth, they're not paying for these wars overseas. I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But the average American doesn't know this. That is one thing. The average American knows what inflation is. And the MSNBC host who was saying that, I think was really insulting the intelligence of a lot of people. But a lot of people don't understand where their tax dollars actually go. So that's why I applaud him for that. I think it's a very smart business move. So you bring that kind of mindset over to the presidency. What do you get? You get trade deals. You get peace deals. He walked into North Korea. He had North Korea wanting to be our friend and ally. And as I've said before, Kim Jong-un, he was actually raised in, I want to say, Switzerland. Don't quote me on that, but it was a Western country. He was sent out to go live with his uncle or a family member. He loved basketball. He loved to ski. He loved the Western lifestyle. He would go out to parties. He would go out and probably drop some LSD, probably drop some Molly, hung out like a regular person. And then he was called back to North Korea when he was, I want to say, 27 or 23. It was a young age like that. And then he took over about 10 years later. And what he did when he took over is he started westernizing North Korea. He started building shopping malls. He started making concerts. He started incorporating a lot of the Western ideologies and lifestyles into North Korea. And then when he was friends with Trump, he was married to one of the biggest singers in North Korea. And he was calling her like the grand lady or, something like that. And Trump encouraged him to change it and westernize it a little more and call her the first lady. And so Kim Jong-un was, primed to turn North Korea into a free state. But the Dems can't have that because Ukraine, North Korea, several other of these rogue countries, quote unquote rogue countries, they're essentially used as hubs for trafficking, for drugs, for all kinds of stuff like that. It's like a no man's land for them. And they can funnel money, they can launder money, they can do all kinds of stuff like that. And if you have a regime like North Korea, who his father and his grandfather, ran it in a certain way, then he comes in and he says, hey, I want to legitimize this. I was watching a documentary that most of his personal funding comes from trafficking and comes from illegal activities because he has to, because of so many sanctions put on his country. And the thing is, when you sanction a country, you're not punishing the government, you're punishing the people of that country. So if he wants to westernize and say, I don't want anything to do with this, I'd like to legitimize, my enterprise here, very similar to the movie Godfather, where if you take the three movies put together, it's about Michael Corleone, first of all, not wanting anything to do with the business, then having to take over the business, and then working to legitimize the business and make it a legit business. And Trump was a huge influence on Kim Jong-un, which is why we never had any problems with Kim Jong-un. But the deep state was going to lose one of their hubs or way stations or whatever you want to call it for being able to do all their trafficking and everything like that. One of the states that they control, and they couldn't have that. So that's why he was demonized over and over and over again. Going to the comment about Israel, Trump is very pro-Israel, and I agree with that. I don't agree with being pro-Israel. I don't agree with being pro-Islam either. So the two are equally as destructive in my humble opinion. However, Trump made the Circle of Peace over there. He was given a medal from Morocco that only kings are given for creating peace deals over there. Pretty soon Palestine would have been a free nation or recognized as a sovereign nation. I think if he would have had 4 more years, Palestine would have. But he is the king of the art of the deal. And when you make a deal with somebody, you have to give and you have to take. There's a give and take. So he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And then Netanyahu, who's about to come back in power, by the way, he just got voted back in, was like, okay, cool. You know, you're creating these peace deals. You're doing this. You're doing that. Okay, now we owe you. You know, it goes back again to the movie The Godfather, you know. In the very opening scene, the guy says, you know, I love America. I came to this country. I worked hard. I did this. I did that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the Undertaker that's talking. And he says, you know, but these kids, they raped my daughter. Then they went to court and they were let out. They're free. They're walking the streets with a suspended sentence. And he says, Don Corleone, you know, I'm looking for justice. And Don Corleone says, you've never had me over for a cup of tea. You've never had me over, you know, as a guest in your house. Why would you come to me and offer me money to do this for you? Why don't you come to me as a friend? And as you go through the whole movie, the whole series of movies, you see that Don Corleone, Vito Corleone, he always did favors for people. And by doing favors for people, then people were indebted to him and they wanted to do a favor back. And so in that movie, just to kind of give you a little bit more context, it's a little irrelevant, but his son winds up getting assassinated and he goes to him and he says, I need you to return the favor now. Do your best work that you can. He was shot in the face. Do your best work on my son for his funeral. But nobody wants to be indebted to the mob, obviously. But my point is, though, that you make deals. And when you make deals and you give something, then people are indebted to you. So if he wants to create peace in the Middle East and he's got, you know, a much bigger plan, then of course he's got to give something. He's got to give Israel Jerusalem, which is what they wanted. And then making peace with the Saudis and the Arabs, and not the Saudis, but the Arabs and everybody. The reason the Saudis came up is because right now the Saudis are making a mockery of Joe Biden, and Joe Biden is begging them to produce more oil. And they said, no, we're not going to produce more oil. And Joe Biden was even begging them to wait for this announcement until after the midterms. And they were like, no, screw you. We're going to announce this whenever we want. They fist bumped Joe Biden when meeting him. The first time in American history that a president has been fist bumped by a Saudi royal, showing a huge amount of disrespect. When Queen Elizabeth died, Biden was seated almost last row. I mean, it was a really big insult. And it wasn't just an insult to Biden. It was an insult to our entire country and how the world sees us as weak and pathetic, and throwing us out in the back, where before we were seen as one of the world leaders. Trump was about making deals. So you got to give a little to take a little. And, you know, the best deal is when both people walk away a little bit unhappy, because both people are having to compromise, but they're also getting somewhat of what they want, but there's been a fair compromise there. And Trump he knew how to do that. So I would rather have a president that can go around and do that, has the business experience to do that, than somebody that's just going to say war, and then demonize people in the media, and then start all these problems for no other purpose except for personal gain. What do you think about that, Sheree? Anything you want to chime in on, or I can move on to the next topic?
I want to
I got
chime in,
you.
but I'm afraid if I chime in, then we'll start to veer off topic a little bit. And some of these are really, really, really
Okay, no
good questions that I
problem.
wanted to bring up on the last show. So
Let me finish
yeah, please.
with a couple more of
Yeah,
these.
go ahead.
So there was another comment here. Trump didn't drain the swamp or arrest Hillary. I agree with you. I think he got in and he realized that the swamp was a lot bigger than it was. And here's the thing: arresting Hillary, what would be the point? It would be a temporary satisfaction for people. But really, what you want to do, you want to get to the core. You want to get to the root of rooting out this corruption. And so, if he would have spent his efforts trying to arrest Hillary, which I think he could have, and he should have, and I think Barr dropped the ball in many different ways, many, many, many different ways. I mean, even just the elections. I don't know how constitutional this would be, but if you have a state of emergency, like a worldwide lockdown, I think that calls for postponing the elections a little bit, not indefinitely, but at least until the current crisis is under control, to make sure that people can vote and make sure that everything is fair and safe and
That
so
their
on and so
votes
forth.
counted and
Yeah. But instead, what do we see? We saw a massive dump. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out where did it come from? And we're also seeing this massive dump in the midterms as well. So, I'm just trying to see from all perspectives here and, understand that the government as a whole is corrupt. It's a swamp. One man can't go in there and drain the swamp. He may have very well wanted to, but look at the FBI. The FBI is so corrupt. Who's going to arrest Hillary? The FBI. But if the FBI is bought and paid for, if the FBI is manufacturing the Russian disinformation and the Mueller report and everything like that, you can't go to the FBI. The FBI is not going to go and arrest Hillary Clinton. We see how corrupt they are with the raiding of Mar-a-Lago and all of that. And have you noticed you haven't heard anything about that? Why? Because nothing was wrong. He signed an order saying that these documents are declassified. And he took home documents that were declassified. And he even had somebody come over there from the Library of Congress or whatever archives, the National Archives, and look through the documents and say, okay, you can keep this, you can keep this, you can keep this, you can keep this. Make sure that this is locked up behind a safe. And that's it. Make sure this is locked up in a well-secured area. But we've got all the documents we need. And he cooperated with them for like 6 or 8 months or something like that. They still raided his house just for the show. And it goes to show how corrupt the FBI is. Now we have whistleblowers coming out. There's 26, 27 of them saying that they purposely squashed the Hunter Biden thing. They will purposefully not look into that. They any conservative agent who looks into that is basically fired or pushed out or reassigned or something like that. And the FBI is having a hard time because whistleblowers keep coming out, but the whistleblowers are silenced afterwards. It's like, first they were encouraged to come out and be whistleblowers, and they're encouraged by Congress, but at the same time, they're not taking any of the whistleblower information seriously. So who's going to arrest Hillary? Is it the military is going to show up? And that's the thing. The military was also deep state. I would imagine that the average soldier out there would be praising Trump because he didn't send them out to war, or to die for oil and resources and so on and so forth. He valued their lives. He valued their service. He valued them as people. He revitalized our military. But I talked to some military people, and the general consensus amongst the very few people, these are very few people, and if there's anybody who's military in the chat or has served or is a veteran, anything like that, let me know. But they like to go overseas. They like to go overseas because they get double, triple, quadruple pay. So they're like, when are we going to go overseas? When are we going to go overseas? When are we going to overseas? And then you have General Milley, who in January of 2021 worked with Pelosi and was open about this, about taking nuclear codes away from Trump and also coordinating with his counterpart in China and saying that we'll let you know if Trump tries anything with China. And basically on the side of China, the deep state, so on and so forth. This came out. It was mainstream news. Nobody's denying it. Milley was like, yeah, we took the nuclear codes away from a sitting president. What the hell?
That's terrible.
How in the hell is this happening? If the military was on his side, maybe. But then what would happen? Military coup? And then they would just be screaming Nazi Germany, 1933, 1938, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So it just seemed like a situation where it was like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Exactly.
You know, he had the support of the people, but there's so much corruption all up and down the line that he couldn't. He just, he couldn't. Yeah. So that's my view on that. Let me know what you guys think. And then there was a couple of other ones. We talked about the vacation yesterday. Vacation, of course, is a word that we use in place of another word that just YouTube doesn't like us to use. But he was pro that. And, I do have to say that I agree with you. As I said before, I think anybody in that position would have to introduce a solution to a problem. And so him doing that with the vacation, he was coming up with a solution for a problem. If he didn't, they would crucify him all over the place and there'd be no chance of re-election or, anything like that. The fact of the matter is that most people are brain dead zombies. However, going back a few years before, he was very vocal about vacations on Twitter before he was president. And he was talking about how dangerous they are and how people shouldn't be getting them and so on and so forth. So realistically, he's not really pro-vacation. But he was just put into a position where he had to bring in a solution. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it wasn't mandatory. And they tried to scare us. The media tried to scare us. I said this yesterday, so forgive me for being redundant, but they tried to scare us over and over and over again. And a lot of people fell for it. A lot of people didn't. They tried bribing people with a free beer on the 4th of July with $100 if you get this, so on and so forth. And it was funny because I was thinking to myself, I don't know why I didn't think about this back in 2020, but I was thinking, when they were really pushing all this vacation stuff, I was thinking, oh, which one are you going to get? Are you going to get Johnson & Johnson, who's been sued for their cancerous chemicals? The baby powder is carcinogenic. And they've had the biggest lawsuit against them, or are you going to use the Pfizer one that they have had the biggest fine imposed upon them for their other practices? I mean, like every single company that was producing these were completely and totally corrupt and have a track record of harming people. And even in front of the EU, a Pfizer representative was just in front of the EU just the other day, and they asked, "Did you test to see if this would actually stop the spread?" And they were like, "No." And they were like, "Why not?" And Pfizer was like, "Because we didn't have time. We were just told to make this and we made it. But we didn't have time to test it. We didn't have time to see if it would stop the spread, so on and so forth." And so that's why there was one after another, after another, after another, after another, until finally they just gave up. And here's the thing. I don't think there's a single person out there that regrets not getting it. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people out there who are regretting getting it. And we've been hearing about sudden adult death syndrome and all kinds of stuff like that. People have been dropping like flies. There's actually a video that Sheree and I were watching the other day. Sheree, I don't know if you have that video or not.
I do.
But it's a compilation of athletes, very healthy people, just dropping dead on the field.
I can find that for you right now.
One after another, after another, after another, after another, after another.
It's awful. It's awful.
But here's the thing. At the end of the day, it's about personal freedom, is it not? Mm-hmm. So they had their personal freedom to go do what they wanted to do. We had our personal freedom to do what we wanted to do and to not take it. So really, the responsibility lies on the individual. I mean, I think if we would have band together as a people and said no to the 14 days to flatten the curve, it would have stopped everything dead in its tracks because they don't have enough enforcement. And that's what, who was the first guy? Oh, man. Sessions. Oh, yes, Sessions. That was one of the big Q things at first. And this was my first red flag of Q. Trust Sessions, trust Sessions, trust Sessions. And the first thing Sessions tried to do was go after all the cannabis dispensaries And we were living up in Washington at the time, but down here in Nevada, they were doing the Cannabis Cup, and Sessions managed to get the Cannabis Cup shut down. But then he realized they don't have enough resources to go after every single dispensary. The genie's out of the bottle. They just can't do that. So on the same note, they can't go after every single business that refuses to enforce their stupid mandates. Yet people followed along like sheep and did it. And it became a true democracy in the sense of mob rule. And so, in my opinion, that responsibility falls more on the people than anything else, because the federal government is not supposed to impose any mandates, and they never did. It was on a state level. But the people were the ones that went along with it. The people were the ones that shut their business down. The people were the ones that were self-policing each other. The people were the ones that were watching people walk into a store and go, mask, 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 mask. If we would have shut that down right then and there, I don't think that agenda could have moved forward. But it moved forward. The damage was done. Luckily, it wasn't mandated. So, here we are as far as that goes. So I guess to come back, full circle to that, of course, if you're in that position, you're going to have to offer a solution. And so, what would you do? Would you really, if you were the president, would you really come out and say, well, these things are bad for you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, against the general consensus of all the medical industrial complex? You just can't. It's a losing battle. So you've got to pick your battles, and you've got to be strategic with the battles that you're picking. But at the end of the day, preserving freedom. Okay, another one. Trump, take the guns first, and then do the due process later. I seem to vaguely remember that. Let me see where this is, because I just Googled that. I'm seeing a Twitter account with it. The only thing that I see when I Google that, I do remember that. I remember that, but I don't remember him saying that. But for the benefit of the doubt, I Googled it. It comes from one Twitter account, and it just says, take the guns first and then do due process later. Trump today. Joe Hannon. At the Joe Hannon on Twitter. So I don't know where he said this, and even if he said this, because that's the thing. There was a lot of misinformation, disinformation spewed by the mainstream media, and a lot of sound bites taken out of context. But at the end of the day, did he do that? No. And so that's what I'm concerned more about. I'm not really concerned with rhetoric. And that's, what the deep state has done, is made people concerned more with rhetoric than actual actions. And to me, actions speak a million times louder than words. And also, the presidency isn't a popularity contest, but they've made it a popularity contest. They've made it a cult of personality contest. And it's not. It's who can do the job better. But if you can drop me a link or anything like that, I'll be more than happy to look into that further. But at the end of the day, we can look in hindsight now and say he never did that. So even if he did say it, and it's most likely taken out of context, what was the harm? Because it wasn't done. So your vote doesn't matter. Agree with you 100%. I've seen that firsthand. There were a couple of other things from the chat. The chat just moved on me though, so I'm going back up to see. If everyone stopped paying taxes altogether at once, we could collapse the current system and rebuild. Yeah, actually, the income tax wasn't brought in until like 1930s, and it was a voluntary 1% to help with the war efforts. Then they changed it to 2%, then they changed it to 3%, then they changed it to 5%, then they changed it to 10%, all the way until it became mandatory. That's the way they do it. They do it. That's why when they said 14 days, I was like, no, this isn't 14 days. And people were like, oh, just shut up. It's just 14 days. You're going to kill grandma. And I'm like, look, trust me, it's not going to be 14 days, okay? It's not going to be 14 days. This is letting the camel's nose under the tent. And a lot of you guys and gals were saying the same thing. But, that's hindsight, that's neither here nor there. So, anyways, let's see if there's anything else from the chat. I saw a couple of other messages that I wanted to address, but I can't find them. And the chat's going by so quickly.
I'm almost done with the like the third show and all the Patreon messages that came in between them and stuff like that. Do you want me to just send you what I've got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shauna brought up, notice the media never attacked any other Republican presidents. Right. That was a huge thing for me to look at, is the way that they were attacking him over and over and over and over and over again. You know, he's not part of the club. So that spoke volumes to me. And then when he started calling them out as fake news, that was gold. That was the very, very, very beginning. You know, he called out CNN and he's like, "You're fake news." And Jim Acosta was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that." And then he's like, and then a couple of weeks later, it was like, "You're gonna apologize?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do apologize. You know, you're not fake news. You're very fake news." And he doubled down on it. And I thought that was great, but I still didn't support him at that time. I still didn't, because it was 2016. I didn't even care about politics at the time. But if I can stay on politics here for just a few more moments,
yeah, please.
I'd really like to try to find this thing from our last show yesterday, but I guess it's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. So we'll just go with this. Yesterday on the show, I said races are 51 to 49, 51 to 49, 51 to 49. Almost every single race right now is 51 to 49. It's absurd. It's really ridiculous. And why have we not tallied the votes yet? You know, we used to have what was called election day. Now we have election days, weeks and months. I was looking at this map, right? You got 189 seats for the Dems. You got 209. When you look at the map, look at the way everything is district, all the districting, okay? And look at the landmass that's there. And that looks completely and totally red to me. Completely and totally red. And come to find out, you know, I didn't even know this. This is a side note. Some states have 4-year terms for senators. I didn't know this. I thought all senators and congressmen had 2-year terms. And every 2 years there was a vote on senators and congressmen. But apparently a lot of states for Senate, Montana, Wyoming, New Mexico, Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, Maine, Delaware, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts have 4-year terms for senators. So they had no elections. And I was like, wow. I mean, I never paid attention enough to a midterm to even understand that. But a little fun fact for you guys and gals out there. But when we get to the House, you can see it up on the screen. I mean, look at that. The majority of the country is red. Yet what's going on right now is we have 189 seats for the Dems and 209 for the GOP. Look at how little is blue on the map. I mean, it's ridiculous how small the blue areas are on the map compared to the red areas. And how the hell did South Texas, a border town, go blue in these districts here? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. But if you go and you look at the numbers, you'll see a lot of them are 49 to 51. You know, Katie Porter, 51%. Mike Levin, Democratic Party, 51%. Yadira Cavero, 48.1%. Jared Golden, 48.3%. Dinah Titus, 51%. Susie Lee, 51%. Brandon Williams, 51%. Andrea Salinas, 49% going on 50 with 61 reporting. So on and so forth. I can go through all of these. And are you telling me this country is really that divided, that it's 51 to 49, as I said on the last show, that we see with every single presidential election, every single House and Senate race? I mean, I think I saw one that was like 62% winning. And I was like, okay, this one's interesting. And then Georgia's having runoff elections because in Georgia, they have different rules that if you don't hit 50%, you have to have a runoff election. I guess people have to go vote again, which seems a little silly to me. But I think that's good for Herschel Walker. It was interesting because I never really paid attention to midterms. But when Q was putting out his stuff last year, we felt like something was really, really, really wrong. And we did a show called Operation Trust. And it looked like the whole Q thing was exactly the Bolshevik Revolution by the playbook. Line for line. And the Bolshevik Revolution actually means the majority. We're the 99%. Basically, that's what Bolshevik Revolution is. So it was interesting to see. I just lost my train of thought. The Q thing. Q was talking about how Trump had put in these little lights on the ballots where he can tell the real ballots from the fake ballots. And I didn't go along those lines, but I did talk about it a little bit on Facebook because people were talking about it. And USA Today did a hit piece on me and called me a Q supporter and all kinds of stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Complete bullshit disinformation. I mean, literally, like, I was talking on Facebook and a video went viral. All my videos on Facebook will go viral, 100,000, 200,000 views. I do a video while I'm waiting, for something, and I'd wake up and there'd be like 200,000 views on it on Facebook. And I'd be like, wow, oh my God, this thing went freaking viral. So they targeted me for one particular video. The video right before that was Operation Trust. And all we were doing is talking about how Q is an op. And in that video that I did, it was literally off the cuff. Me and you were waiting to go into an appointment, and I turned on the camera and we just started talking about the show that we had the day before and some of the callers that called in. And some of the callers were saying Trump might be reinstated, all this. And I said, 3 or 4 times, I'm not a Q supporter and I don't believe any of this. But this is what people are talking about. One of the things that people were talking about at the time is this hidden thing on the ballots that you can tell if it's a real ballot or a fake ballot. However, I didn't think back then, and I should have thought about this back then, but I didn't really pay attention to midterms or elections or anything like that back then. I did because I saw how well the country was going up until we got hit with the Kung flu. But each state, according to the Constitution, is in charge of their own electoral process. So even the ballots themselves don't come down from a federal level. They're all printed by each state. So for Trump to do something like that, he would have to be able to do it in every single state and have every single governor and every single state-bodied election official in on it to be able to mark the ballots from the real ones and the fake ones. So that's just a little interesting tidbit that I just happened to just, come to as I was looking at this and looking at how even mainstream media is saying, the Dems look like they may be in trouble, but they still have a lot of mail-in ballots to count that may be able to push them in the right direction. And I'm like, man, they're so transparent. I mean, they're straight up saying they have a lot of mail-in ballots that they can still count. And it's like
they pull out of the woodwork.
Yeah. Okay, so that's an hour of me literally on my soapbox. I apologize,
right.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Do you want me to send you this file?
No. I think we should. I think we should just talk about it.
Okay.
So let me run a quick break.
Okay.
Just to kind of break it up a little bit, and I'll play something cool that Shereen and I did, or
too,
something like that. Or you know what? Maybe we'll do some WTF bra. What do you think? Yeah, and then we'll get into some listener questions and things like that. So, there seems to be a new one by WTF Bra called DJT and Lil KC MAGA King Remix. So, here's a new one for you guys and gals. We will be right back.
MAGA King, I'm the MAGA King. MAGA, ultra MAGA King.
I love WTF Bra.
Yeah.
I think they changed their name to Remix Bros.
Yeah.
But Kenneth Copeland, he's a creepy guy. He's very, very, very creepy. And seeing him teaming up with Trump, that's the thing. It's like we don't want to push it to a theocracy. That's the last thing we want. And, staying right in the middle is the balance. And I'm wondering if it's going to go into a theocracy. As I've said before, we'll wait and see. But seeing him on stage with Trump like that is the first time I saw that. So that's a little bit chilling. And Trump wasn't very religious. DeSantis is.
Extremely religious, extremely devout, quote unquote. And sometimes it leads to people thinking that the ends justify the means and things like that because they're saving more souls, and they become the morality police,
right?
In a thing like that. So
right.
That's the only thing I'm concerned about in that regard. But do you want me to go over some of these listener questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's flip the topic a little bit.
Amazingly good. So FP said about the show we did yesterday, I'm curious if Pelosi was attempting to get DePape, it's actually DePape, it's not DePappy. The last E is silent. DePape shot and killed by the police. If Pelosi was attempting to get him shot and killed by the police, why else would someone walk away from the police and to the assailant to try to take a hammer from them?
I have a theory. I think I talked about it yesterday on the show.
We did a little bit, yeah.
The theory is that they have the police on their side. They know what they're doing. We talked about the Adam Schiff thing. We talked about the ice cream connection. If you haven't seen that show, check out the last show. I don't want to be redundant.
Yeah.
But I think some rookie cops went out there because they even said in the police report they didn't realize this was a quote-unquote high-profile call. They didn't know it was Pelosi's house when they went out there. I think when Pelosi answered the door, he thought that the police were on his side and he was going to go back and finish what he was doing.
Right.
And before he did, DePape grabbed the hammer and hit him in the head over it. And so, the police are bought and paid for, the FBI is bought and paid for, everybody's bought and paid for. And I think Pelosi was banking on that. But do you remember the original narrative? Is that Pelosi was tied up.
He was tied up in the house.
And DePape was running around with a hammer. And that and Pelosi happened to be able to call 911, Paul Pelosi.
Yeah.
And by using coded language, by saying like, what are you doing here? Why are you in my house? Things like that. He was able to get the police to come to his house. And then that story changed to Paul Pelosi opened the door and said there's no emergency here, didn't leave the house, anything like that, walked back towards DePape, and then DePape hit him over the head with a hammer. And so now Pelosi isn't tied up in his house. And then the 911 call comes out, which I really need to find because I heard it once on Tucker saying, with Pelosi saying, I'm having a dispute with a friend of mine. So that thing stinks to high heaven. It stinks to high heaven.
Give everybody your theory that you just came up with, I think it was this morning, about who really called 911.
I'm wondering if DePape was the one that called 911. And he initially called 911, hung up the phone, and then 911 called back. So the 911 call that we're hearing is not Pelosi calling
the police,
but it's 911 calling back. And that's why all you hear is him saying, oh, no, everything is fine. I'm just having a dispute with a friend, trying to signal, no, we don't need any police out here, but police went out there anyways.
Right.
So it's just a theory. I've got nothing to back this up with, but it makes sense when you line it all together that DePape was the one that was calling the police.
Right.
Because if you call 911 and hang up, they call back. And that's what that 911 call sounded more like. It didn't sound like Pelosi was calling 911 and saying, we have a dispute here with a friend. He was like, no, it's just a dispute with a friend. Everything is fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Click. Yeah. And they only played a short little clip. I didn't hear the whole 911 call, but Tucker had it. So as Elon Musk said, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
The very fact that we are not allowed to listen to the 911 call in its entirety, and we're only allowed to listen to small itty-bitty clips of it, there's ways they do it all the time. There's ways that they can bleep out personal information from those calls. There's ways that they can do that. They just don't want to play that 911 call because I think there's a lot more to it.
Yeah,
like you said.
I agree with you. Somebody said he was calling for Capitol Police and local police showed it up instead.
Right, instead. Yeah, I think Capitol Police is totally in on all of it. They were in on 1-6. They were in on all of these events that made the Democratic Party look like, oh, well, we're the sane party, and then the other party look like the crazy insurgents that
Right.
yeah.
And if
wanna
I can
destroy
go
the
so
country.
far as to make an even bigger stretch,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Nancy Pelosi, or one of her allies that set this whole thing up.
Right.
And let me tell you why. Paul Pelosi he just had that DUI, and he had supposedly a passenger with him.
Uh-huh.
And supposedly, I can't verify this, but the passenger was underage.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's talking about that at all.
Right. Right.
So I could very easily see Nancy saying, okay, we have a problem. We
He's
need to
much
take care of
more
the problem. And
liability,
we
yeah.
also need to create some kind of political thing before the midterms. Let's go after Paul.
Let's kill two birds with one stone, get rid of the liability of Paul, and also at the same time further our agenda against, the whole Q thing and all that, because they were trying to say that he was into this, like, some of the same things that we talk
That
about.
he was a
that
Trump
is-
supporter,
that he was-
QAnon,
and all that. But
all
we're
that
not even
stuff.
into QAnon
And
because we understand what QAnon is.
Yeah.
And they're saying that he's not only a Trump supporter, he's a QAnon. He was wanting to hurt people in office and all this stuff. I don't think any of that's true.
Yeah.
I think that he has a drug problem, and he was offered free drugs to go over to this house, and that's the same thing that happened to all these other men.
What was that guy's name who's in jail?
David DePape.
No, the guy
Oh.
that's in jail.
Ed Buck.
Ed Buck. Okay,
Yep.
we talked about Ed Buck yesterday. Ed Buck being this big Hollywood guy. He funded a lot of political campaigns, and he's literally in jail right now for running a drug den where he would get homeless guys to go over there. He would shoot them up with a bunch of stuff and then rape them repeatedly. And
Yeah.
he's in jail. We read the stuff off justice.gov. It's
Yeah.
no conspiracy theory. Adam Schiff went over to his house 13 times. He's friends with Pelosi, all of that. And so we're wondering if this is the same thing, but, tied into the same
The same system.
disgusting fetishes these people
Yeah,
have.
it goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
We might not get into it on this show exactly, because I haven't gathered all my notes together about this particular thing yet.
Yeah, I'd
but
rather not talk about that.
And
if
I'd
that's
rather
okay.
not.
I
I'd
wanna
rather not
skip that
taint
and
the
talk.
show with that.
Yeah, let's get into something positive.
Okay.
Or something controversial, or
Yeah.
maybe some comments that challenge the stuff we were talking about. Yeah.
And so this is a question from Aaron Art. A good point from her. Good show. It just have a couple of comments. First of all, the N word also has another derivation. It comes from a shortened version of ignorance, similar to the shortened version of Afro-American being shortened to Afro and then Fro. For Southerners, the N word was to highlight that a person was ignorant. As far as Fetterman being put into the Senate seat, there actually are articles that state that the person taking the seat must be of sound mind, just like for president. However, the vetting has gone completely down the toilet in the last 20 years, which is why Brandon was allowed to be on the ballot and in the Oval Office, and he publicly refused to be evaluated by a doctor.
That's a very good point.
That is a very good point.
We played that WTF brawl yesterday. Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
That's amazing.
And back in 2020, they were questioning Trump's cognitive abilities. And so Trump went and did a cognitive test, and he just aced it with flying colors. And somebody in the comments said, wow, I think he was trying to tell us something. But he really was. Like in 2020, he was talking about how Joe Biden is unfit to run and that he's got dementia. And he went and took a cognitive test, and he said, they ask you a bunch of questions, and then you get to the 30th question, and then they go back to the third question. Do you remember what it was? Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
Person, woman,
And
man, camera,
he
TV, yeah.
said, I got it perfect. And I took a cognitive test like that with my doctor a couple years ago, and I remember doing the same kind of process. And I couldn't remember the words in order.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of the words wrong because I was doing word association in my head. And instead of pig, I said like bacon or something like that. When they asked me for the words back, but they were close
Yeah.
enough. So it's very difficult to, go through like 30 questions and then remember the third question that was asked in the order of the words that were said. And it shows very high cognitive functions. Joe Biden refused to do that. He sat in the basement the entire time, and it's very clear he's got dementia. So Fetterman as well, just having the stroke and having brain damage, it's very clear. So the comment raises a very good point. There are articles of competency.
Yeah.
And if you can't do the job, you can't do the job.
Right.
But this is the best that the left has
to offer.
The big talking point right now is that, well, the GOP didn't run strong candidates. The Dems didn't run strong candidates. You're telling me that somebody with brain damage is a stronger candidate than a brain surgeon?
Right. Exactly.
And how coincidental is
Thank
this?
you.
How coincidental is this that we have somebody on the left with brain damage and we have somebody on the right, Dr. Oz, with who's a brain surgeon? So is this just a broken matrix that we're seeing? You have a polar opposite there. You have brain damage and a brain surgeon, and people were like, "Give us a brain damage guy."
Yep.
The race hasn't been called just yet, but it looks like Fetterman is gonna take that seat in Pennsylvania, which,
or his wife will.
As I said yesterday, I'm not going to make fun of somebody who is suffering from a stroke or brain damage. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be giving them the ability to send hundreds of thousands of people out with guns and people detonating bombs and so on and so forth and declaring wars and passing legislation. So there have to be some checks and balances as far as that goes. But that's what people wanted. They wanted the brain damaged guy, not the brain surgeon.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. But they're puppets. We've been saying they were puppets from day one. Now we're actually literally seeing brain dead puppets, and it's sad. It's sad, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I think it's abuse of a disabled person. I think that
so too.
Putting Joe Biden up as president is elder abuse. So I just want to be clear. I'm not making fun of that, but we're literally run by brain dead zombies who are puppets. Who's in the background pulling the strings is a question.
Well, in the case of Fetterman, it's his wife. It's the wife of his that cares so much about him and loves him so much and is so attracted to her husband.
Oh, they're saying Dr. Oz is a heart surgeon. Okay, sorry. If he's a heart surgeon, my bad. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, John Fetterman's wife loves him so much and is so attracted to him that the only place that she left his head on the pictures is in the entryway where
we played that clip
public
yesterday.
Will be there
it was
to see
disgusting.
And I'm not going to play it. I don't want you to play it again. I'm just saying this is who they actually voted into office the other day. That's the only person they really voted into office, because that somebody that can't even understand another person's speech is going to make a lot of mistakes. And those mistakes could be devastating for the American people overall.
Oh, yeah, Rich said what? I don't know if he was referring to us or not, but yeah, his wife, you need to look up the tour of their house. And we played a clip from it. You can just go to our last show.
Oh, it's creepy.
And she's doing a tour of the house, and she's like, this is our entryway, and I figured I would leave John's head in here because I think that's really nice, because this is a public space. Instead of saying, this is my husband, these are our kids,
proud of him,
so on and so forth, as most people would do. We don't have any pictures of us around the house, but if we did, it would be pictures of us together.
Right.
I think we have one picture of you downstairs in the Temple of Isis.
Yeah.
And it goes with a whole little motif that we have with the Temple of Isis and, all that stuff.
It's so beautiful.
I don't like pictures of myself around my house. We have a couple of pictures of us in our bedroom.
Yeah.
When we were at the Bouzoukia in Greece. But short of that. But... yeah, she was talking about, I left his head in there because I thought that would be really nice to leave his head in there.
Yeah, that means in their bedroom, bathrooms, all the private rooms, his head's cut off all the pictures.
Well, maybe, but what it really means is that she's embarrassed of her husband.
She's embarrassed.
She doesn't want to be with him.
Yeah.
She's with him for political gain.
She does not think he's attractive.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she sees him as like, who's that guy? Lurch. She sees him like Lurch, he's very unattractive. And
The
I'm not
Hunchback
attracted
of
to him.
Notre Dame.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame, something like that, where he's Quasimodo and she's that preacher guy that's keeping him locked up in the thing. And I really have a feeling like poor Pennsylvania is going to be represented by a brain damaged person whose wife was illegal until she married him, and she only married him. I mean, obviously, she only married him for ulterior motives.
Yeah, and the thing about Pennsylvania is a big seat.
It's a huge
because
seat.
that determines the majority.
And
so that's why people were watching Pennsylvania. They were watching Nevada. They were watching a couple of key places. But as I showed on the map earlier, I mean, you have very, very small districts that are blue.
Yeah,
and when you look at the landmass of the United States, it's painted red. I'll put it back on the screen here so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me get it here. I mean, look at that. This is all red.
It's all red.
Yet somehow this is 189 to 209. That's all the redistricting that they did.
I was about to say it's a deep redistricting.
Yeah. So all they need is just a few key places.
Yep.
To get a majority in the House. And you can have all these places red. I mean, if you just, that's got to be 10%.
Oh, yeah, there's no
10% blue, maybe?
Yeah. I would say maybe 12 to be
around there.
Extremely generous.
Yeah, 20% would be extremely generous.
Oh, that's too generous.
Yet,
I would say 15 to 20.
They have 189 seats. That's their redistricting.
There's something wrong with that. I think Stalin did the same thing actually back when right after the Holodomor and Lenin died. Stalin actually started passing these. Well, he got the people to. It was one of the last times that the Russian people could actually vote on something, but he got them to kind of vote on a new. It was like a farmland program. And they had no idea what they were really voting for, but what they really were voting for was the development of like a CIA type of Gestapo type of organization that their whole job was finding people to rat on other people and then taking people to prison for 3 years for just trying to eat. For instance, let me just tell you real quick. There was this instance where they took the Cossacks, what they called the Cossacks, which were landowners in Russia at the time that were very, they weren't really wealthy. They just had land. They had land and they worked the land and they were farmers and it was like a family farm type of thing. He wanted those to disappear. So what he did was he got what was the last of the democratic type of voting system. He got them to vote for this wonderful program that he promised all this food was going to start flowing into the cities because people in the cities were starving. And so they all agreed to this. They were like, oh yeah, sure. And what ended up happening though was in order to get more food, you either have to pay more or you have to take it from someone. And so what they did was they told the Cossacks, okay, your quota this year is going to be 20,000 pounds of food, whether it's grain or whatever. And these farmers, let's say you only can make 5,000 in a year. Like you don't have enough land to make 20,000 pounds worth of food. That doesn't work. And so, of course, the next year they would be low on their quota. Anyone and everyone that was low on their quota had not only the food for that year taken away, all of it, every single bit of grain was taken. All the food was taken. All of their cattle and livestock that they used to help them in the fields were taken. All the seeds for next year's harvest were taken. They didn't leave a single thing for these people to live on or to use on their farms or anything. And within a year, there was the worst famine in the history of Russia. I mean, it was awful. It was really horrible.
Same thing in China.
And if they found you, here's what's even worse. If you even walked through the fields and picked up stray pieces of grain that they didn't take, you could go to prison, and a lot of people did. About 40,000 people in the first 3 years went to prison for 3 years. They went to a labor camp for 3 years.
Wow.
And so this is the kind of stuff that happens when your electoral system is messed up. Redistricting results in the cities getting all of this power, while the country areas, the Midwest, little towns everywhere, gets totally screwed over. And that's exactly what happened with Russia too. They made it to where the cities had all the power over that process.
China did the same thing. They
China
were
did the
making
same
their
thing, too.
farmers farm for export, and they weren't meeting their quotas.
So they lied about their quotas.
So they lied about their quotas.
Meeting their
and then
quotas, yeah.
Everybody starved.
That's exactly what happened. They were too afraid, because at that point China was becoming extremely brutal towards people. And so to them, a lot of them thought, well, this is a huge country. They've got hundreds of districts to go through. Let's just say we met our quota and we'll look good. They didn't understand that the system was set up to be predatory against all the farms unless they were state-run farms. And what they wanted to move to was state-run farms where it was basically like a labor camp, except it was voluntary. And people that were starving would go there and work the fields all day long, and they would get meager rations at the end of the day. And this is kind of what I see coming here in America, because I've never seen so many things off the shelves at one time before. I'm just going to say that.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is here.
State Farm.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, let's move on.
Because we've stuck on politics a little too much. But here's the thing. The politics, it's important to look at the climate of what's going on right now, because it's going to determine living conditions for each and every one of you, for us, for everybody.
Yeah.
So, we can sit there and try to meditate this all away, but at the end of the day, we need to really prepare for what's coming and understand what's coming and understand where things went wrong, even if it's for later generations to learn from, but we're repeating history. And so, this, in my opinion, the politics is a direct reflection of the spiritual. When the country's spiritual aspects, I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about just individual spirituality, is so screwed up by religion, by everything else like that. We've lost our spirit, and because we've lost our spirit, it's manifested into the physical. Wars are fought to feed these energies that are interdimensional, or whatever you want to call them. And so, as above, so below. It's all relevant. It all connects. And unfortunately, we're in one of those downward slopes. Somebody yesterday said, what was that comment? I don't have it in front of me, but they said, it's too much doom and gloom.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I just read that one.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I agree with you 100%. There is way too much doom and gloom going on right now. There is way too much. And we need to figure out a way to fix it.
Right.
But I wholeheartedly agree with you. There's way too much doom and gloom.
Oh, I agree too. Why is there so much doom and gloom? Are we going to just kind of meditate and just know that everything's going to be fine? And that type of mentality is what leads decent people to do things like, for instance, to their body out of peer pressure. Whether it's taking that vacation.
That's a good point. The New Age was pushing that vacation.
Yeah, and they
said this is how you're going to upgrade. And it was interesting. Forgive me for being redundant, but it was interesting because I watched in 2018, 2019, the New Agers starting to talk about DNA activation
and upgrades
and DNA upgrades. Then I started hearing about ancestors. And, the ancestors are in our DNA, and the ancestors this and the ancestors that. And I was sitting back on the position of, this is an avatar that I'm using temporarily. I don't really have a connection to this avatar other than the fact that I'm driving it right now. It's like, I have a car. I don't really have a connection to that car other than the fact that I drive that car. The previous models of that car don't really have any impact upon me as the driver. Just my current vehicle does. But all of a sudden, the New Age started shifting to DNA and ancestors. And then what happened? BLM came out, and the vacation came out. And what did the vacation do? RNA based, upgrading the DNA. And some New Agers were even talking about how you have to have it to upgrade into 5D. And I was like, oh my God.
So
Problem,
messed up.
reaction, solution, Pied Pipers all the way through.
No, I agree, and I think that's disgusting. And we were very angry, righteous anger.
I was pissed.
It was righteous anger.
Unfortunately, it's deleted because they deleted my Facebook page, but the one that was getting all the views. But I did a video. I was like, "You motherfucker! I'm gonna kick your fucking ass if I ever fucking see you." I was so mad.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
so mad because that's the thing. Like this view has always been constant from the very beginning. At first, it was towards preachers. Now it's towards anybody. If you fuck with people's spirituality, if you fuck with their consciousness, if there is a hell, that is what hell is reserved for people that fuck with people's consciousness and fuck with people's spirituality and mislead them for some kind of sinister agenda. And preachers have been doing that and feeding off of people. And New Age has been doing that and feeding off of people. And then when it came down to telling people to get the vacation so they can upgrade their DNA and enter 5D, that's when I just lost it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, enough of this. But anyways, let's move on.
Okay, so we're moving on now. I'm going back up here. Please ponder. Jakim Partek, this is kind of what, along the same lines of what we were literally just talking about, and tell me if it's too political, but please ponder, why do theocracies never work? I have a theory, but I'd love to hear from both of your thoughts on it.
That's a great
great question.
topic. I'd like to hear some people in the chat too, your views on theocracies. In my opinion, it's because nobody speaks for quote unquote God, but anybody can claim to speak for quote unquote God. And so really it's not God. It's a reflection of the culture's leaders at the time calling out to this higher, not calling out, but attributing everything to this higher source.
Pinning God
and
on
making
there.
it infallible to question it because it's coming from God himself. It's never
How dare you
herself.
question the
Sometimes
word
it's
of God.
herself
Yeah.
in certain cultures, but mostly it's himself. And
That's crazy.
looking through history, every theocracy has brought violence, hate, division, chaos, torture, and they revere torture. Saudi Arabia, they still crucify people to this day. I mean, you look at the most atheist countries, which, my problem with atheism is that you deny your own divinity, but they're the most peaceful countries, like Switzerland, for example. They're one of the most advanced, freest and intellectual countries because they are mostly atheists. So just looking throughout history, I mean, if we didn't have the Dark Ages, we'd probably be doing interstellar travel if this thing was anything more than a simulation. But we had 500, 800 years of science just coming to a screeching halt. We had ancient sacred information that was like ayahuasca and the plants and the gnosis from the shaman and all this very sacred stuff completely wiped out of our history, taken by the Roman Empire, put into the Roman, Vatican Library, kept away from the people, and then flipped around and said that if you use any of these tools that you're doing witchcraft. And there was a suppression of all of this. And they'd go around and they'd kill all the native people. And so, yeah, religion has been the worst thing for mankind. So that's the problem with theocracy. Your views? Is your thing flipped backwards?
I'm
Okay.
muting it myself.
Okay.
The problem that I have with theocracy is like Chris said, but I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that. The word of God, or the things of God, the will of God, is something that is so unbelievably objective that it's almost like saying I put all of my trust in I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm going to put all my trust in a government that is based upon these ideals that are so far removed from constitutional rights and so far removed from any sense of nobody being allowed to have slaves, for instance. You're not allowed to have slaves in most of the world nowadays. That is not okay. Slavery is never okay.
Well, do you know where slavery still exists?
In those Middle Eastern theocratic nations.
And in Africa.
And in Africa. Africa was, yeah.
And that's the thing. I'd really like to see BLM talking about the slavery that still exists in Africa.
That is absolutely right.
It's black people enslaving black people. You want to talk about Black Lives Matter? Talk about that.
Yeah. Talk about those black lives. What about those black lives? Yes,
Anyways.
they matter. And when you have a theocracy, there is a lot more emotion attached to pretty much everything. A law is no longer a law. It's a sin. Something illegal is no longer just illegal. It's forbidden. It's a sin. You're going to go to, not only are you going to go to hell, but we're going to put you in a hell on earth first. That's the whole mindset of punishment and reward and understanding God through this extremely twisted lens that is almost like those mirrors at the county fair that make you look all warped. It's almost like that's what God is in the Judeo-Christian religion. It's to some people it's their savior. It's their big daddy that takes care of them. It's the one that bestows all the blessings upon them.
If I can interject real quick.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
For others, it's, well, he loves me and he's never going to give me more than I can handle, and he's going to bless me 10 times over. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Wendy, she raised a great point. Slavery is everywhere to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. Very well said.
It really is.
I said yesterday, the most hopelessly enslaved is the man that believes he is free.
Yeah.
And we've been told over and over again, land of the free and home of the brave. Over and over and over again. And we're one of the least free countries in the world. Not one of the least. I mean, we rank pretty far up there. I mean, we carry the biggest prison population here in the United States. So,
well, that's because we think that we're so free that we keep, doing things that the government considers crimes, but that isn't hurting anybody, and they keep putting us in jail.
Yeah. So that's a great point, Wendy. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
So do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you didn't really mention theocracy as in
So theocracy is basically taking the same thing that beats children, and calls it punishment, just regular punishment, that takes somebody's life and says, well, if you're a slave, you need to just obey your masters. Don't question, and it never says anything whatsoever about stand up for yourself. You have rights. Defend yourself. It's okay. Defend the rights of others, especially. There's not a whole lot of that in these theocratic societies because it's not in the theocracy. I mean, it's not in the theology. Does that make sense? If it's not in the theology, why the heck would it be in the theocracy? No, a theocracy is built upon ideals that are very predatory towards people, and I think that's why it doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. People were talking about home of the something. I don't remember what it was they said. But I was going to see if I have that national anthem that we did from a couple years ago.
I just saw it.
Did you really?
When I was cleaning out my...
Okay, yeah. I was going to take a quick break and play this for you guys. We actually got this large speaker and we did this national anthem outside.
Oh, it was great.
Did I take? I didn't take it down. No, I didn't take it down.
I think you did take it down, but I grabbed it before you had a chance to.
Really? Okay. Yeah, we cleaned up our YouTube channel in 2021, and I think some things are missing.
Yeah, but it's a really small file, so I just have to find it real
Okay.
quick. It'll just take me a minute. If you want to address any more questions from the chat, I've got plenty of questions here, though. Why don't I just read you a question real quick and then I'll look for this. Ashley from Oz, if the end times are coming, I'd like nothing more than to spend it at a massive dance party with Chris and Cherie, with Donnie Darko playing sets until the very end.
That's awesome.
That is exactly what I want to do.
That's where we're at too.
If
it's
we
like
know
let's just
when it's
enjoy
gonna
the
be,
rest of
let's
the
do that.
time that we have here,
Yeah.
and forget about this place afterwards because it's burning down.
It's burning down, and it had a lot of good things about it, but it's also had a lot of terrible things about it. And I think we're going to have a lot of experience to be telling beings about when we get over there. So, thank you so much, Ashley, for saying
You know,
that.
they tagged one of my Dimitri Darko sets.
Yes, I heard that. What was
Yeah.
it for?
Because I said something about the vacation
Oh, yeah,
in the
that's
middle of a
right.
DJ set, in the middle of a 4-hour
As
DJ
if it's
set.
like a song. It's like part of a song.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And they were like medical misinformation. I'm like, seriously? Like,
That
really?
was like a poem. When you were like reciting a poem with that. You weren't really saying you weren't really saying what
Yeah.
it sounds like. So we would
here it
too.
is. New national anthem.
There we go.
Okay, cool.
I looked it up and I found it.
I need to
but
run and
didn't get
grab
chance
a
to
little
look.
more coffee.
Okay.
So while I do that, this is Cherie singing the new national anthem. This was in 2020?
Yeah, that was in
2021.
2021.
July
that's
4th,
right.
2021. So this was after the selections. This was after all of that. And this was way past 14 days. Way past 14 days when the curve was supposed to be flattened. So anyways, we'll be right back.
Say, can you breathe through the mask on your face? Who so proudly we hail as we're social distancing? Whose pie charts and graph boards never could get it right. Oh, the anchors we watched were so blatantly lying, and the Molotov cocktails, business burning everywhere, gave proof to the right that police should be there. Oh, say, does that cloth mask make you feel safe in the land of the sheep and the home of the slaves?
Bravo!
Play ball!
We actually heard some of our neighbors clapping for that too. So all of our neighbors are really cool. They're all First Amendment advocates and all that. So we actually heard them clapping. And yeah, she threw in the play ball at the end. But it's a sad time that we're in. It's a sad time. I still got to run downstairs and grab some more coffee. So let me play a track real quick. Be right back. Hear it. So, but you did say earlier, Melon, any thoughts or advice for family members who fell into gender reassignment thing? By the way, they banned the T word, and then there was another one. Any thoughts or advice for family member who fell into the trans thing? The only thing that I can say is, number one, if they're young, that's a different story. You know, if you can elaborate on the approximate age, that kind of helps to put things in a little bit of a different perspective. If the person is, you know, in their 30s or 40s, then it's different than somebody who's like, you know, in their teens. So people in their 30s and 40s, the only thing I can say is embrace them, love them, support their decisions. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. What is wrong is when they're pushing it on children and they're pushing it on teenagers. And as I said yesterday, I showed a couple tattoos that I've had removed, and they're still not fully removed, but I had to have like 13 laser surgeries so far, and still a couple more to get them completely removed. I got them when I was like 20 something, and at that point I didn't know what I wanted on my body for the rest of my life. Now that I'm 40, I understand what I want on my body for the rest of my life. These have meaning to them, all of my current tattoos. But you have to be 18 to get a tattoo. But you could be 5, 6 years old to get gender reassignment, and if you don't, your parents can be arrested for child abuse, and that's you gotta balance it all out. So if it's a grown adult, support them, love them. There's nothing wrong with it. If it's a teenager, you might want to speak to them a little compassionately and explain to them, like in the same manner of tattoos and things like that. Tattoos can be removed, and it's a very, very painful process. I mean, getting the tattoo was easy. Having it removed hurts like hell, and it takes a lot more time to have it removed than it is to get it on. And the laser treatment is excruciatingly painful, especially the one on my back. That went right over the bone. And I remember when I got the tattoo, just tattooing over the bone, like the backbone and the spine, was excruciating. Getting it lasered, I'm in the chair, shaking. And luckily the laser tech, she can recognize when I'm in too much pain, and she'll back off for a second, put some ice on there, and then take it off again and hit it again. And I just try to keep going because it's actually a quick process. So to do my whole back, which is a tattoo about this big, it takes her about 3 or 4 minutes to cover all the areas. But it's 3 or 4 minutes of excruciating pain. And so I will just bear through it. And I'm like, biting something, and I'm like, no, just keep going. And the seconds feel like hours. It's a rough process, but I'm just like, I can get through the pain. And once I get through the pain, everything will be okay. And sure enough, everything is okay afterwards. But when it comes to gender reassignment surgery, that's something permanent that can't be reversed. And until it can be reversed, it's something that needs to be taken very seriously. And so the only way to approach that, in my humble opinion, is with compassion, love, and empathy. Because shaming, Bible thumping, all of that, it's just going to make people run in the other direction. It doesn't matter who it is, what the subject matter is, but it's going to make people run in the other direction. Especially in teenage years. Teenagers are always wanting to rebel. I rebelled. Everybody rebels. And my father would tell me, don't go to these rave parties. They're bad. Don't go here. That's bad. Don't go there. It's bad. He would tell me everything is bad. And so I stopped listening to him. And I started doing the opposite of what he was telling me to do, because he was so anti-everything. On the few things in life that I really needed to listen to him, I didn't listen to him, because I was so used to doing the opposite of what he was saying. And he didn't have any idea what he was talking about in the 98% of things that I didn't listen to him about. But that 2% of stuff that I should have listened to him about, I didn't, because he had set that standard for that 98%.
Right.
And so that's why I think understanding and compassion is the best way to go. And, letting kids be kids and not being that oppressive force. Mm-hmm. Once it's time to talk to them about serious life changes, they're more likely to take you seriously if you're not constantly telling them, this is bad, that's bad, don't do this, don't do that. If you're that constant influence, they're not going to listen. But if you're the influence, it's like, I support you, so on and so forth. When it comes time to something serious, they're going to listen to you. Mm-hmm. My mother, for example, she was 100% anti-drugs. She never did cannabis, nothing like that. Even to her dying day, she prided herself on that. But she realized that me and my friends were going to do what we do. And so instead of fighting it, she would be supportive of it. My brother, my sister, myself, my girlfriend, their significant others, everybody would get together and I lived down the street from them. And we would have parties, and we would drop Molly, and all kinds of stuff like that. And my mom would, instead of telling us how horrible it is and everything like that, she would bring us water. She would say, if anything happens, I'm here. Call me if anything happens. We used to smoke pot in her house as teenagers, and she would say, I'd rather you do it here. And in case anything bad happens, which with pot, obviously,
I'll be right here.
Nothing bad's going to happen. So I listened to her when she told me, certain things like, hey, this is something really important. You need to listen to me on this. And so I would listen to her. My father, on the other hand, I didn't. So Cherie is just joining us, but the chatter asked, what do you do with family members who are falling into the LGBT thing and wanting to do gender reassignment surgery? And I preface it by saying, it depends on the age.
Yeah, I was
if it's
just about to say,
30,
yeah,
40,
it's gotta be the
it's
age.
different. And all you can do is really support and love them.
Right.
If it's a teenager, that's different.
Right.
But you also can't be that oppressive force that is always telling them no to everything, because this is a very serious thing.
It
and it's a
really is.
life-changing thing, and it's something that can't be reversed. Like
cannot
tattoos can
reverse
be
it.
reversed, but, and they're even permanent, supposedly.
Yeah, you can't
But-
get your body parts
Right.
back that you've lost. Yeah.
So you've got to be that compassion loving, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What would you say to that?
I would say that if it, like Chris said, if somebody's getting into their 40s or 30s
Nina,
or 40s,
I'm sorry, and Nina the Mystic sent a super chat.
Nina, thank you so
Thank you.
much, Nina.
Hope everything is
We
going
love you
great
so
up in Canada.
much.
Okay, continue,
Okay,
please.
If somebody is wanting gender reassignment surgery at age 30 or 35 or 40, it's inherently going to be different than somebody that wants to get it at age 13, 14, 15, 16. And that's reflected in even just basic child psychology.
Let me jump in real quick and add. Mellon elaborated and said he was a young adult.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he got into college, he changed everything. So about college age.
Yeah, college age is a good age to start taking steps in that direction. And that, in my opinion, if you're going to want to get gender reassignment surgery, just the fact that you've been through your whole life, and let's say this is college age, you're 21 years old and you've been living this life for your entire life where you feel like you've been in the wrong body. And that is a horrible way to feel. And it's awful, yes. But what we need to be doing, in my opinion, is when these kids are, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and they're having these feelings and they're having these thoughts, it's a great idea to not encourage them to have these thoughts, but not discourage them from trying to define who they are. And it's not okay to acquiesce to them so much, because we have a bad problem with our society right now where parents want to be their child's friend and their best friend rather than their parent. And they want to be fun, and they want to get along with their child, and they want their child to see them as cool and everything. And that's a very dangerous proposition there, because if you are going with your best friend to have gender reassignment surgery, to have her breast cut off, or to have his cut off, then that's if that's your child, you need to be treating them like your child.
No, they said it's a family member, but to 20 years old,
But
in the early 20s, that's an interesting time because they just became adults, but they're not quite old enough to have that life experience. I mean, that's when I got my original tattoos, is when I was like 21 to 23. And now, 20 years later, I'm wanting to laser them off.
yeah,
So...
no, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think counseling,
I would just
a great deal of
yeah,
counseling, and a great deal of dressing the way you want to dress, and showing yourself to the world the way you are, and while you're making those decisions, is the best way to determine if that's the decision you want to make that's going to be a lifelong decision.
Yeah, I would encourage them to start with that.
Yeah, start with counseling.
Start with dressing the way that
and
they
dressing
feel.
the way you want,
and see how that works out.
Right.
And then at that point, they'll get a good baseline on what they actually want. But I would encourage them to hold off on any permanent changes.
No hormones or anything like that.
And, you know, if you want, direct them to Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner regrets it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of videos out there of people regretting getting their gender reassignment surgery.
Right.
And so, you know, have them watch a lot of those videos. When I went skydiving for the first time, I sat there and I watched skydiving accidents first and foremost because I wanted to know exactly what I was getting myself into.
The risks.
And the risks. Yeah. And I still went skydiving afterwards anyways, but I did so.
And
so I think that's the best way to handle it. But you've got to have love and compassion because any kind of force is just going to push them in the other direction because they're already feeling oppressed as it is. They're already feeling like they're not in the body that they should be in. And so you've got to treat them with love and compassion. And that's why, you know, when I run into a trans person, I'm very respectful about their gender identity. I never misgender anybody. But I understand how that's been weaponized and used by the left, which is what I'm completely and totally against. But one-on-one, you know, or in a group setting, I'm very respectful to everybody's personal choices. I just don't like it pushed down people's throats.
well, not just people, but babies. I mean, we're talking about like children that they've just got out of diapers like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and they're learning about these things way too young, I think. And I think what's happened is kids that even kids, let's say for the sake of argument, there's kids that are you know, trans in their heart and in their mind. They know that they're in the wrong body from almost day one that they remember being conscious. And that's usually the case with people, you know, that really truly, you know, are in the wrong body. They've always felt like this, and it's always been a consistent thing. And what the best thing to do, in my opinion, is counseling. Get them to talk to somebody, even if they won't talk to you, because let's face it, their schools.
I don't
and
think
all
counseling
this,
is a good idea.
You don't
And
think
the
counseling's
reason
a
that
good
I
idea?
say that is
Not
because
like
then it
Christian
puts
counseling.
no. Then it puts people in the mentality that something's wrong with them.
Not necessarily.
You got to be a friend.
Yeah. Somebody that's skilled in understanding gender dysphoria and things like that can really help you come to some really a lot healthier conclusions about what you look like now, how you feel now, how you felt your whole life. And it's really just somebody that is extremely knowledgeable about these things that you can cry on their shoulder all day long because they understand you. You said something really interesting, the other day while we were arguing a little bit. You said, no, it's about understanding. It's not about listening. It's about understanding. And that really hit home for me because that's usually the case with almost every single thing that involves interpersonal relationships that can be volatile, like this very issue. Because a parent that has seen their little boy as their little boy their whole life, or their little girl, oh, my little princess, their whole life, they may not have they're just ignorant. They don't have the understanding to be able to help you, or to, help you not feel bad about it, or help you feel like you're not only okay, you're awesome. Some people don't have parents like that. But
that was a very interesting question because we've never had a question like that.
We have never had a question like that, and
it's very, very, very thought provoking. Thank you for asking.
It
that.
really has been, and I hope I haven't said anything out of line.
No, everything you said was great.
I think that if you're putting children on hormones, before a certain age, you're causing so much detriment to their body during a time when they may change their mind before they're even, out of their teenage years.
Yeah, college is an interesting time because it's in that halfway point. You notice how I said teens and 30s?
Teens and 30s,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between the two. When you're in the 20s, that's that's a part that I didn't even consider.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting.
Well, and depending
interesting
on the
thing.
environment
at the
you're
end,
in,
at the end of the
state
day,
you're in. I'm sorry.
I
go
would
ahead.
say it's about compassion, empathy, and support.
And find that support that is compassionate and empathetic.
Yeah. And if you can help them see that you're supportive of them, but you're asking for their patience, they might come to their own conclusion, and they might go ahead and go for it, or they might not. But as long as they know they've got people on their side,
Right.
that's what they're looking for. They're looking for acceptance. And a lot of leftists, LGBT, feminists, things like that, they're looking for acceptance in a certain group. And so show them that acceptance. Show them or him or her, or whatever the case may be. I can tell you this. When I was a teenager, there was a girl. She was very, very, very pretty, extremely pretty. And we had a little fling for a little bit. And at the time, she had shaved her head, and she had a little bit of just a little thing right here, like bangs. And she was super cute. I mean, super cute, super feminine, all that. And we had this fling. And I had no idea, but she had planned to transition later. She never got any surgeries done, but she transitioned later. And 20 years later now, she's completely transitioned into a guy. And she wrote me on Facebook, and she's like, I talked to her a few months ago, and she's like, I always really loved you. I always really had this thing for you. I just want to let you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Aww.
And I found it to be really heartwarming and flattering too, because, she was into girls, and that's it. But I was one of the only guys she was ever into, but she has changed completely. She looks like a guy now. And so it was really difficult having this conversation with her, because it's not the same person that it was back then. But she made a permanent choice for herself. And while she didn't come out and tell me that she regretted making those changes, from the conversation, I felt like she was trying to tell me, I regret making all these changes that I've made.
Well, and you could probably tell just from the tone of her voice, the way she spoke about her life, and her accomplishments in life, or her lack of accomplishments, the way she interacted with you. I think from what you told me, it sounded like she was more somber than she used to be when she was, she had not transitioned yet. And it seems like transitioning has been very hard on her. That's just, what I got out of the conversation you had with me about it.
Yeah.
And
Alyssa said one of her friends committed suicide after transitioning about 5 years ago.
Sad. That's so sad.
Yeah.
That could happen for a number of reasons, besides just psychological ones, actually. I mean, all the taking somebody with certain chromosomes and trying to cheat a little bit biologically to make them appear on the outside and feel more on the inside like they are the other gender, that is something that can be very dangerous to like psychologically, just that by itself, because you're tricking the brain into working in a completely different way than how you were biologically born for your brain to take in an environment, make decisions. All the processing that goes on in a woman's brain is way different than what goes on in a man's brain. When you're adding testosterone, you're adding, all these anabolic steroids sometimes, you're adding, all these things, and you're also turning their equipment into a guy equipment without, they're not going to have testicles, that actually work. They're not going to have the biological makeup of a man. On many levels, I don't think that they're able to connect with other men the same way that a man that's born biologically male is able to connect with other men. They have, the way our brains are set up are completely different from each other. And I think that difference combined with, looking now like the other gender, you look like the other gender, you feel, on the outside like the other gender, but the brain can't be changed like that.
That's true.
So-
Just to wrap it up here,
Yeah, please.
Melon also said, do you think it would help to talk about how the body's an avatar?
Yes.
And I think that's a great point.
That is
And
an excellent
the
point.
body really is just an avatar, but it can go both ways though, because if you start talking about how the body's an avatar, then you can say, oh, well, I can customize my car any way I want it. I can paint it black or I can paint it pink, so it might backfire a little bit. But in actual fact, masculine and feminine are elements of consciousness.
That's right.
They're not gender roles. They're gender roles here in this matrix.
I was
in this
talking about 3D
matrix.
reality, yeah.
But consciousness level, we all have a balance of masculine and feminine,
That's
and that's where the balance is achieved. And so perhaps, going down that road might help them out a little bit. To realize that they're not the avatar they're driving. They're the
Right.
consciousness that is driving the avatar. But if you're unhappy with your avatar, I used to drive a big old truck. Now I drive a sports car. So, I
Well-
transitioned from a big old truck to a sports car.
Well, and I can see how you're right on a lot of what you're saying. I still do think though that, even if it's not counseling, find a mentor or somebody that, can help these kids, especially kids, but even young adults that are experiencing these gender issues, to really talk to somebody and talk it out, and talk to somebody that's knowledgeable about this and that knows all about all the people that have regretted it and that knows about all the people that haven't regretted it, and help them make the right decisions on that one.
People are wanting to call in.
Oh yes, please
So,
put the call-in number on. And
Call-in number is 612-398-0600. I completely forgot about that. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
Sure, Dave.
There's another really good comment. It has nothing to do with anything like that. Just switching gears real quick. Ether Tweaker 47 said, "Hey man, just want to say that there's some evidence to suggest that Putin has been dead since 2010, and his image is being used to promote aggressive policy. Tyrants like the real Putin don't live too long. They tend to get locked up or killed by their people."
I read that comment, and there was a movie called Equilibrium. And in that movie, the head guy had died years ago, and they were just using like a projection of him to make everybody go along with the agenda. Do you remember Equilibrium?
I never saw Equilibrium.
Okay, it was
Maybe we
very
should watch it
close
tonight.
to The Matrix, but it was like The Matrix in 1984 kind of like mixed together. I think Christian Bale
okay.
was in there.
Yeah, we should watch it tonight.
Yeah, I think it was the one, they're taking this kind of pill or there's some kind of medicine to keep them, balanced and in compliance, and he stops taking his dose. And it's kind of like a Matrix action kind of movie, but like 1984 Brave New World kind of thing. And then his kid walks in. I remember this one scene. His kid walks in and he's like, "You're not taking your medication. I'm going to be reporting you." It was that kind of
creepy.
dystopian kind of thing. But at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, I already spoiled it, so I apologize to anybody out there. But you find out that father, or whatever the guy's name was, it was like a father character, had been dead for years. And all it was is just his projection on the TV.
Oh, wow.
Just pushing this thing, and he was basically just a puppet. And so
That's interesting. 'Cause
I don't think that Putin is dead, but I have seen allusions to that idea. Joe Biden is brain dead.
I know, exactly. Might as
So,
well,
yeah.
Might as well have Putin be so too. In 2008, a Pentagon study claimed that Putin suffered from Asperger's. And recently, 4 British tabloids also claimed that he may already have been dead. Rumors about the declining
Oh, really?
health. Yeah.
Oh, so there's something to back this up with.
Yeah, rumors about the declining
Ooh.
health of the Russian President Vladimir Putin gained steam in February this year after multiple videos of him appearing to tremble and fidget in public surfaced on the internet. And you would think that CNN and all of them would be like all over this if it were true. But if it were true, they wouldn't want to say that because they need to have a threat against Putin. They need to have Putin actually be a threat to the United States, right?
Well, Yeah, and I mean, think
They
about
have to
all the
keep him as
all the
a threat.
backroom deals they were doing. with
Oh,
Putin.
yeah.
The uranium one thing, Ukraine thing, all that.
And if he's gone,
if he's gone and they have control of Russia,
it's a free for all.
then no, I mean, they can move the pieces of the across the board, and they're playing both sides of the board now.
That's right.
That's an interesting thought.
Rumors about the declining health of Russian President Vladimir Putin gains. Okay, but long before the idea of invading Ukraine even unfolded, the Russian president's ill health debates had already been surfacing. According to previous media reports, some of the rumors even date back more than 2 decades. During the early days of Putin's presidency, there were endless stories of him being severely ill. Later in 2003, new reports emerged after the Russian magazine Kommersant Vlast. And see, this could be CIA propaganda, anti-Putin propaganda to make people think, Putin's weak. Kommersant Blast published a photo of Putin in an oversized suit, which suggested that he was suffering from eczema on his leg, a condition that makes your skin red and itchy. In 2005, the Atlantic magazine published a hypothesis from Brenda Connors, a research assistant at the Department of Strategic Studies at the Naval War College in Newport. Connors, a motion analyst, told the magazine that Putin's right arm and leg practically do not work, which indicates the consequences of either a stroke or suffered in childhood trauma or an illness. She derived this after watching a tape of Putin's first inauguration.
Okay, so this is dating
way back. But
imagine this. Imagine they took control of Russia, kept this puppet president up there who had died a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And had kept it going as though Russia was still existing, so they could do whatever they want.
That reminds me of the NAEs.
I was going to say World War II.
World War II.
Yeah. That's a hypothesis that I've had that World War II was won by Germany, and Hitler was moved to Argentina. I think some FBI documents just came out that he was moved to Argentina, and then they brought everybody over here through paperclip. And they just said, wasn't there something you were watching, Penny Dreadful? And in Penny Dreadful, they have a meeting.
It was 1938, and they had a meeting.
And they say, okay, well, you tell her. You're the one that saw it.
It was a meeting between the one of the commissioners of, it was like a county commissioner who was trying to build this highway in the middle of where people lived. And they'd have to tear down all those people's houses and all their little stores and everything in order to build this highway. And this guy wants to invest in LA. And the reason why he wants to invest in LA is because he has been appointed by Hitler to actually look at all of the roads and look at all of the maps of where the roads are and where the little districts are and everything. And he's part of this plan too, to build this highway that's going to destroy all these, especially Latino and Latina people's homes. It's very, it does allude to certain things that I wish they wouldn't have alluded to, because it's obvious it was tongue in cheek against certain politicians. But at the same time, they, oh shoot.
You okay?
What was the point I was trying to get at? I'm sorry.
We were talking about Penny Dreadful.
Oh.
About the Nazis.
Oh yeah,
and then they had the meeting at the bridge. At the meeting, they were talking about, well, what if we just say we lost? We let people believe that, instead of having this big victory parade, we let people just believe that that they won, and we just secretly take control.
Yeah, it's at like the very end, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the very end, I think at the very end of the last episode, it finally admits that.
If that's what's happened.
Yeah.
And I heard others, I don't remember who it was some of the old school guys from like the 2000s. They were like, we're living in the Third Reich, or the Fourth Reich, or an extension of the Third. And when I started looking into it, I was like, oh wow, this is really, with paperclip, everything like that. Like this is, even Homeland Security, when that came out, I was like, where did we hear Homeland and Motherland before? All these terms are very similar. And you even look at the left, and they're acting in the exact same way, using the exact same tactics, so on and so forth. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that
and that would be much more palatable for people to believe that they won.
oh,
And the most hopelessly enslaved is a man that believes he is free.
the man in the high castle.
Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, the man in
I
the
was
high
about
castle.
to say that too.
The man in the high castle really illustrated this well. There's no way that they're going to be able to take over a country of, even back then, there were still about 100 million people at the end of World War II. That's a lot of people to have to take the guns away from, to have to, march down the streets and everything. It's a huge landmass.
Look
too.
at the EU.
And yeah,
Who's the head of the EU? Germany.
that's right.
Whose currency controls the euro? Germany.
Isn't it Germany? Yeah, it is
Yeah.
Germany.
The Deutschmark. That's
The
basically what it
Deutschmark,
is.
yeah, is what's controlling everything right now.
Right.
So I think
There might be something to that.
I think there definitely is something to that. And it might even be the case where we're being fought over by Germany and China. Because I've heard a lot of stuff about Germany and China not getting along lately.
That's a good point. But I know this, when you're bringing in a new world order, this is something we said at the very beginning when we first started back in 2009. When you're bringing in a new world order, you can't have superpowers. You've got to bring the superpowers down. And I remember going on with Nathan Frazier in 2007 on Ghosts of the Republic and
Exposing
talking
all these
about how,
traitors. Sorry.
according to their white papers, they want to create a war with Russia and China.
Russia and China.
And when I said that, Nathan was like, okay,
That doesn't
that's
make sense.
weird.
Yeah, it
He
make
didn't
sense
say it
to
like
him.
that, but I could tell by the tone of his voice. And me and Nathan are good friends. We've been friends ever
Oh
since.
yeah, we love Nathan.
Yeah, we've done music together, all kinds of stuff like that. I haven't talked to him in a while. I need to
Yeah,
check,
we need-
check
we
in
need
with
to
him and
call
see how
him.
he's doing.
Yeah.
But here we are, it's 2022, so 10, 12,
10, 12
13 years later. No, 15 years later.
15 years later.
15 years later. You remember when I posted that on Prison Planet? I was
Uh-huh.
like, hey, I'm going to be on with Ghosts of the Republic, et cetera, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you tuned in.
I
and-
did.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
oh, he even sounds cute when he's
Aw.
talking, not just in his music.
That was the first interview I ever did. I was really nervous.
The first interview I ever did was
I remember hearing you calling into Alex Jones.
yes, and I was
Yeah.
also on the Corbett Report, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was also on the
remember
Corbett
hearing you on the
Report
Corbett
talking
Report,
about
too,
the
before we got
swine
together.
thing.
Yeah.
and the vacation for that, and all the different things about those things that people usually don't realize.
I remember hearing you call into C-SPAN.
I called into C-SPAN one time
Yeah.
because that was when Baxter International had accidentally let the actual it was H5N1 go out in a bunch of vaccines that were going to be used on people. And they sent it all into 2 or 3 different countries in Europe. And that would have started H5N1 in people. That would have made people really sick, and it could have spread really fast. And people were horrified when this happened. And so I called in because he was apparently a biowarfare guy.
I remember that.
And so I said, how do you feel about Baxter International accidentally shipping out several boxes of the H5N1 virus rather than the H1N1 regular flu virus to be used in vaccines? To be used in vacations. And he said, I don't know anything about that. He played dumb.
I
could tell he
remember
was playing
seeing
dumb.
that before I even knew who you were.
Aww.
Yeah. And I remember hearing you call into Alex's show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And talking about the vacations again.
Yep.
Yeah. I like vacations. I don't like the vacations that have been around for a while.
Yeah. It's interesting because we had a lot of connection
Yeah, we had a lot
before
of-
we met.
Yeah.
And we would hear each other. I would do interviews with Ghosts of the Republic. Cherie would call
Uh-huh.
into Alex Jones, and I never imagined. I remember hearing you call into Alex Jones, and I never imagined we would get together.
No, I didn't either.
Those
And
thoughts were not in my mind at
no,
all.
me either. You were just a really cool friend, and I had a crush on you, but I kept it under wraps, and for about a year and a half.
Yeah, I was splitting up with my ex, and you told me to go back to her.
Yeah,
You told me to drive all the way from Dallas to Houston and go get her.
I felt like, you don't want to, jump out of things too quickly unless you're really, really sure. And I wanted to make sure that, if I were to start flirting with you and stuff, that it wasn't going to step on her toes or anything like that. And I wanted to make sure that,
This was a year before.
it was a whole year before
Yeah.
we met. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I think we're
okay,
making
so
people
let's
throw up.
I think we are too. So, would you like me to continue?
Yes. Do
Okay.
you want to take a quick break? Because I need to get some water.
Yes.
Or do you want to keep it going and I can just go grab some water?
Fellow traveler, the cries of the mistress speak again. Bidding organic consciousness a welcome to the House of Light. The great institution of materialism has failed. The false civilization built by man has turned, like a monster destroying its creator. Science battles itself impotently against the barriers of the unknown. Only raw consciousness knows the true path. You, the illuminated, can carry the understanding upwards towards the light. Only raw consciousness can teach the children of men to live well, to die well, and in perfect measure, be born again, through the knowledge of virtue, compassion, love, and true understanding, as you are sublimely raised, beyond the veil.
All right, we're going to go to the phone line, 612-398-0600. I can't believe we're already almost 3 hours into the broadcast. Like, the time has just flown by.
Are you serious? It does
I feel
not
like
feel
we
like
haven't
that.
even touched on too many topics either.
know,
That's,
same here.
The crazy part.
We need to speed it up a little bit.
Yeah. We used to have more structure. Like, we used to be on AM and FM, so we'd have, like, a 10-minute segment, and then a 3-minute break, and then a 12-minute segment, and a
hated
3-minute
that,
break.
though.
I hated that format.
Format, yeah.
TFR has a format of a 27-minute segment, a 3-minute break, 27-minute segment, 3-minute break. And I think it helps us speed things up. And
I think
so
it's
all of
much
our
better.
intros and stuff like that were meant for that. We have a whole lot more that we don't play because we don't have as many breaks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we need to go back to a similar format. And that way we know, we speed things up. But I like the free flowing.
I like the free flowing too.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
not only that, it brings the listeners into a space where they can throw out something in the chat room and we can go on a whole new tangent that we never thought of until just then, that we all start to come to conclusions that we have never come to before. And it's like pieces of the puzzle. Everybody out there has a piece of that puzzle and we're all putting them together when it's a free flowing thing, when it's more, cut and dry and, meat and potatoes, this is, what we're talking about tonight and that's it. That's not what we're talking about tonight. I don't want to be like that. I'd
Yeah.
rather, give our listeners a chance to tell us what they're thinking about and what they're, concerned about or what they're dreaming about.
That's true. BTV has become a tribe.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
tribe.
it's not a show.
It's
It's,
not a
just
show
like a
anymore.
hangout now. So
No.
I kind of like it better like this.
I like that
real
too.
quick, a couple questions from the chat.
Yes.
Are you into synthwave? I like synthwave.
I like synthwave.
Yeah. I like that 80s vibe, and I like to see it coming back. And remember what I said in 2010? I said, I predict that as things move forward around 2020, we're going to start going back to 80s style music.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, synthwave is a big thing. I like EBM, which is like EDM, but it's darker and a little more industrial. So late at night, sometime I'll be jamming some EBM and stuff like that. That track that we
Alistair,
just
thank you. Sorry.
thank you.
Yeah.
Did we get a super chat?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That track that we just played is a genre called Future Rave, which is a new genre by David Guerra and Morton. They collaborated and came up with an album and kind of created their own kind of genre, which is really cool. I like the genre, but it's borrowing from a lot of elements from like 90s trance and things like that, but it's slowed down. And so I see things kind of turning back now, like going back to the past, going to the 80s and 90s and borrowing from that and bringing it in and making it new. Where around 2010, it just went into this weird futuristic space, all of music. And it was like really heavy auto-tune stuff and, stuff like that, which sounds kind of cool, but then it sounds dated. So yeah, but yeah, synthwave for sure. All right, let's go to the call board real quick.
All right.
Elephant Tusks has been holding for a while.
Please, yes.
Elephant Tusks, what's up?
Hi. How
Hey.
are you guys? Hey, Chris and Shree.
Good.
Hi.
How are you
Can you hear
doing?
me?
Doing good.
Loud and clear.
Good. Love your guys' show. Hey, we, my friend and I, we went down to the Cecil after hearing you talk about it on the show all this whole time. And I had never been to the Cecil before, but I heard your show, I think probably 2 shows prior, speaking about the Cecil and stuff, and we wanted to go check it out. And we got there, and there were 2 residents. So they had it closed down, but they're still housing low-income people there. And there's security, and you can't get past. There's a lot of security there. And so we happened to walk up to it. We're taking pictures, which we emailed you. We got about 20 pictures we emailed you to your email that
What-
you had on the
Which email
And,
which email did you send it to? Do you remember off the top of your head by any chance?
Geo at
ChrisGeoTFRLife.com.
All right,
Okay.
we got
I'm going to
that.
look it up right now. Okay.
yeah. Oh yeah, and we put the subtitle at the Cecil Hotel, so that you would see it. Anyways, so when we got there, there was this 2 gentlemen out there. One is kind of a tweaker looking dude, and one normal guy. And then got talking, and the one kind of skittish guy was saying, "Hey, you guys want to tour of this place? It will take you one at a time," and it sounded really sketchy because, well, we didn't want to be separated and go into the Cecil Hotel with just this strange person. We're kind of reluctant to go in the hotel regardless. So we started talking to the other resident, who was very cool. And we still, it was just feeling the vibe of the place. It was, obviously we're not as in depth and as and connected as you guys are. But it did have a weird kind of vibe at the place, just even standing outside of it. And then we were asking stories, and he said, that it had a massive amount of rooms, and they only are housing the first few floors and the first building. There's 4 buildings there. And so a lot of it, 80% of it is actually still empty. And I asked if they were refurbishing it, and he said no. And I said, "Hey, have you guys heard anything?" So the guy that was kind of the sketchy guy, he was saying, "Oh yeah, one time I did shrooms and all sorts of crap came out." And he swears that he witnessed a portal. And I tried to get him to elaborate a little bit more, but he was really, he didn't really want to go into that. He seemed a little skittish about that. Like, it kind of scared the shit out of him. And so he didn't really elaborate. And then the other resident said, "Oh yeah, I've seen stuff too." He had a couple residents that fell out of windows. There was a few hangings while he lived there. And I'm like, "Oh." And then he says, "Well, I'll be willing to give you guys a tour." It was really, we went there right at dusk. So it was kind of, we were chickens. We couldn't do it. So then we talked to the guy for a bunch, and then we were about to leave, and I went back and I said, "Hey, we have," I had to say, just to make it legit, I say, "Hey, we know these people, they're super cool, and they're interested," thinking of you guys, of going, and they want to get into the Cecil and have a tour. Would you be willing to give them a tour? He said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, they may have to give some loving, meaning, possibly monetary or whatever.
Yeah, of
but
course.
he'd be willing to give
Baksheesh.
Um,
Sorry.
That's what they call it in Egypt. Bakshish. Yeah.
Yeah. So he gave me his contact info, email. I asked for email as well. And so he said, yep, anytime, just let him know. And he'd be more than willing to take it up. I said, they're kind of spiritual people. They may want to do like, a spiritual event there too as well. And he says, yep, whatever they need to do, he'll do the tour. He'll let you guys, if you need to, do your thing, whatever that might be. He's cool with it. So then, I just remembered when we were looking up at the building, I looked up and he said, you see that? I saw one unit that had an outside air conditioning unit, and my eye happened to catch it. And at the same moment, he says, oh, I'm the only one in there that has air conditioning. I go, really? He goes, yeah, I'm the only one with an AC unit. If you look up, you can see it. I said, I was just noticing that. And I counted, and I'm like, are you really on the 6th floor? He goes, yes, I am. And I said, he goes, yeah, room 606.
Oh, wow. I found your email. I've got the pictures up on the screen here. So let me ask you this, because we walked down there. Well, first of all, are you familiar with the background with the Eliza Lamb story and all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we walked down there with Emily Moyer, and I didn't really realize that was the Eliza Lamb situation, and she told us all about it. And there was this weird, creepy vibe as we were walking down, like right in the Cecil. It was closed at the time, and they were doing some kind of renovation. I know that they had some zoning issues because so many people had been living there for so long. They were trying to shut it down and renovate it. I think they managed to shut half of it down.
They said it was a historical monument, like a historical monument building.
Okay.
And that it was impossible to tear it down.
Well, it was also impossible to evict the people that were living there.
Right.
And they wanted to turn it into like an actual hotel. There was a documentary on Netflix, and the manager said, somebody's died. Yeah, somebody's died in every one of those rooms. It's way, way, way deeper than the Eliza Lamb situation. But what was your feeling when you walked by there? Because we walked by there and it was empty, but I swear I saw somebody standing there staring at us.
Oh,
well,
so did I.
So I asked the resident, I said, hey, because I know that they couldn't shut down the hotel because of a historical site. And then they had to allow for Section 8 housing for the low income people. And then a part of it, they upgraded and made into a hotel called the Stay on Main, I believe it was. Yeah, and so then I asked about that. They said, so the resident that I spoke to, the contact, he said that they shut the whole thing down after the whole Eliza Lamb thing, and kicked everyone out. I said, really? Even the Section 8 people that have been there for 20 years? He said every single person had to leave.
Oh.
So the whole thing was shut down for a couple months. They had security because they had the looky-loos. They wanted to, after the Netflix thing, wanted to come and check out everything. And then after that, they decided to have sort of you had to apply for residence there for the low-income people, and it's based on how much you make. It's what the percentage of rent that it'll cost you to just stay there. And this guy, has a decent, not the greatest job, but decent. So he says he pays the most rent out of all the other, and some people, just whatever the percentage of that they can afford to live there. And then it's still 80% of them are still, they're not, and I said, are they renovating? And he said, nope. He goes, it's just shut down. And then that hotel, he says, there's no, and I know this from, I also watched the Night Stalker Netflix thing too.
Yeah.
So all these pieces came together. And I asked him, he said they created that hotel with no 13th floor. That's why all the really bad things, like I think Aleister Crowley was there. So all those people stayed on the 14th floor. And the majority of the evil beings were all weird, so really super weird stuff happens on the 14th floor because that is the 13th floor.
Yeah. They do that a lot with buildings. They, it's a superstition thing. They'll skip the 13th floor, but that's a really good clue because I was thinking we need to be on the roof when we do this, but maybe the 14th floor would be the place to do it.
I always imagined ourselves on about halfway up. Actually, I never imagined ourselves on the roof at first.
Do you see what I have on the screen here? What I have on the screen is a shot.
Oh, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
No, I said I don't know exactly how many floors. I think it's 14th is close to the top. I think there might be 15 or 16 floors. If I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, the water tower. I asked him about that. He said when she died, he said, oh yeah, that thing was locked tighter than a drum when they opened the hatch. So what he said is that all the residents is that what they know is that the janitor had to open the hatch to fish her out. It wasn't open. You know how the story on Netflix says they weren't sure if it was open or shut?
Yeah.
So they fished her out, and they never drained. They never replaced the thing. They drained it some, and then they left it. So he says he does not drink out of the faucet. Is that disgusting?
That is one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard.
There are 14 floors at the Cecil, or 13 because they skipped the number 13.
Yeah.
So 13 would be up on, would be the roof. Yeah. I mean, it'd be the top floor.
Oh
so,
yeah, the top floor.
Right here on the screen. I don't know if you're watching the video or not, but as we're staring here, I think there might be a little bit of a delay. I literally just had it.
You're almost
right
there.
here.
It is.
Okay. As we were looking in, I swear this was closed, but I swear there was a being there, just like staring at us. It was the creepiest feeling that we've ever had. Did you feel anything like that? Like there were things surrounding the area?
Yeah, it was like almost, it was definitely denser right there. It's sort of like when you go get off a air conditioning place and go into humidity and that heaviness. And that was kind of what I felt. My friend kind of felt it as well too. And like when you got away from the building, you felt like more carefree and like less of a load on yourself. But when you got close to it, you did have that kind of, but I don't know, I'm like thinking, okay, is that what we're feeling, or is that because we know the background and that's what our subconscious is making us feel too? So it's kind of like that, chicken or the egg kind of a thing. But the weird thing is there's 3 floor level windows or doors that you can look through. One section was the lobby where there was a security guard that had to buzz you in and out. And then there's another one that I peeked through, and there were like, one was like a cafe restaurant, and another one was just like a dining area. And I asked about that, and they said, oh, that used to be a cafe that was there, and that people would come, the residents would come and have their coffee, like a coffee house, and that's been shut down too. That part was really creepy to me. That whole cafe part. When I looked in, it was just like wrapped in plastic. It was like a kind of like a demolition, sort of like someone's doing demolition, but they weren't doing anything. And there was like, there was a bit of there's no air conditions. I don't know. There was just like stuff moving in there, but I don't know. It was hard to see because the windows were super dirty. But definitely there's a heaviness when you get close to the building. Definitely. And we couldn't bring ourselves. It was dusk and it was getting dark. We just could not bring ourselves to actually go into that, knowing like, we're not refined enough to be able to have the strength to, fight against anything. We're just not at that point yet. So that we figured we'd leave it to the professionals like you guys.
Oh, thank you.
To better manage that.
And you know what though? We felt the same thing before even realizing where we were. Right. We were just like, this building's creepy. And Emily was like, oh yeah, this is where the whole Eliza Lamb thing happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, whoa, you feel it like there's this thing on the ground that says Hotel Cecil. And as soon as you walk over that, it's like this vortex right there in between this marker on the street and I guess the whole building itself. And so wow, I was looking at the pictures that you sent us earlier too. So yeah, thank you for sending those. As I've said, I'll forward them to you. As I said, this is the one place that scares me. The pyramid was no problem. The Temple of Isis was no problem. This place scares the hell out of me because of its history, because of the darkness. But when this guy was describing the portal, did he describe it in any depth? Did he say that he saw it with his eyes? Was it more of a mind vision? Was it more of a feeling? Did he give any kind of descriptive or attributes to it?
So the guy that had the portal was the kind of sketchy tweaker sort of guy, and he said he did shrooms, and that was when he wasn't affected, he did not experience anything, and I don't know if he's that in touch to sense things. So he said he only experienced that one time was when he did shrooms, and when he was on it, he witnessed things, and then the portal, he witnessed a portal. And I tried to get him, coax him, but he was very skittish about it. He didn't want to elaborate, or maybe he couldn't describe in words how to elaborate what he experienced. So I didn't get much with him, and then he kind of felt, he kind of walked off and did, who knows where he went. Then we were left with the resident that was the contact, and he said that he feels things. Sometimes you'll feel like, oh, what is that? Like the hairs the back of your neck, or like some sense like something's there, and you kind of like have a deja vu feeling. Kind of look back and there's nothing there, but nothing like super like, not like a chair moving across the room or something like that. But he senses every now and then, not very often. And then it's hard to say, because I don't know how spiritually in depth he is, how his consciousness. I think you have to be at that particular level to be able to sense certain things, or with, of course, like shrooms or ayahuasca, or something that enhances those abilities. So I don't know.
I agree.
Too.
You have to be sensitive to a certain degree. I don't know what we're going to encounter there. I mean, like you said, Aleister Crowley was there. The Night Stalker was there. So many other people were there, and they were engulfed in some kind of darkness while they were there. And this is why I'm really apprehensive of this place, because I don't know what we're going to experience.
I feel like it's going to be a legion of different memories, experiences that we've had.
Yeah.
Kind of attacking us on some level. That's what this place does. It gets your thought processes to attack yourself.
In my mind's eye, I just see these octopus tentacles coming out of the ground surrounding it. And
we're
almost
in a hallway,
like
in my visions,
almost like surrounding it and not protecting it, but kind of keeping a barrier around it.
Yeah.
And those octopus tentacles kind of pull people in. Mm-hmm. Emily had said something similar, that there's just like this pull towards there, and she said she would go and have coffee. If I remember off the top of my head, I haven't seen this video in a while that I've got on the screen, but she would have coffee down the street, and there was always this pull towards the Cecil for some strange reason, just this need to walk by it.
Archon.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that the enemy is in that is living in that. It's almost like there are certain places, especially like in that area, that are very, very active energetically, and this one's active energetically on an extremely, extremely negative level. There were things about the Eliza Lamb case that most people didn't realize, and I'm trying to keep it family friendly here, but let's just say, she was a virgin, except, in a way that Aleister Crowley talked about, and that was that she had a serious injury from that.
Really?
Yes.
When they found her?
She had a prolapse.
I did not know that.
She had a rectal prolapse.
Oh,
yes.
That's even creepier.
That means that she was a virgin.
Yeah.
In her, in her female parts, but they did that to her, and then they forced her into the
the magic.
The creepiest part about that is that Latin phrase that we saw on the cement.
That was so creepy.
And they didn't even talk about this in the documentary. But it said something in Latin. It said something like, "I'll see you on Tuesday,
my good little slave."
My good little slave. And they found her the next Tuesday.
Wow.
So
there's a lot of gargoyles and other things like fixtures on the building too. He had quite a bit of, with historical things too. He had good stories. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe you guys will want to contact him. Speak with him, and then he could. I don't know if he's willing to do like a Zoom, or like with his phone, like a FaceTime, and get the feel, and then maybe over time you guys could get I don't know. And the funny thing is that his name is Adonis, which is like,
Adonis.
isn't that like
Yeah.
God love?
Nice.
There's a sign.
Yeah, we've got your number. I've got your number in the
Yeah,
emails.
that's
I wasn't
great.
sure which email you sent it to, so I checked a couple different ones. But I've got your email here. It's on the screen.
I'm glad we have it
I don't
now.
have your email address on the screen, so don't worry about that. But you know what's interesting is this picture that you sent us. It's got a heart on
It's
it.
a heart
And I've been saying the Cecil is the heart of the darkness.
of the darkness.
And
right
it's right
now.
there. There's a heart right there.
That is so.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh wow! And I don't know if you listened to the show yesterday, talking to the caller, but we were getting into some really deep stuff regarding Southern California. It was very deep and very dark. I don't know if you heard that, but yeah.
Well, okay, so yeah,
I don't.
in a nutshell,
Yeah.
for people that haven't heard it, we
Yeah,
were talking
please.
about the Paul Pelosi thing and how this guy DePape was there,
I want to ask her
and he's
opinion on
this
it.
like homeless guy that was there for like 30 minutes,
Oh,
and there's
yeah,
all
it
these
was
discrepancies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Adam Schiff. Back in 2020, when he started doing the impeachment stuff and all of that, he was accused of going out and basically
homeless.
getting homeless guys and torturing them and all that. And then one of the guys, what was his name, Sheree? Ed something?
Ed Buck.
Ed Buck, yeah. He's actually in prison for that,
Huge
for getting
Democratic
homeless
donor.
guys,
Yeah.
paying them to come up and have sex with them, and then giving them a bunch of meth and basically torturing them and raping them and so on and so forth. And then the Cecil came up in that conversation because the Cecil's right on Skid Row. And
Right.
all these people that live there at the Cecil are very low income people, and all of that. And it's always been like that. And so it'd be
Perfect
a perfect
targets.
kind of plucking ground for these vampiric entities that are like the Adam Schiffs and the Ed Bucks and all of that. And you connected all those dots yesterday on the show, which I didn't even connect. Like, I didn't even know we were on Skid Row when we were walking with Emily.
That's
Like,
just the way my brain
yeah,
works.
she
It
was just like, I
remembers
want to show
all-
you some cool stuff. Here's this, here's that, here's this or that. And I'm like, where are we at? Skid Row. Oh, this is Skid Row? Holy shit, So this is not in a good area. There's just the area itself is full of negative
Yeah.
energy, suffering, all kinds of stuff like
Extremely
that.
bad, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sending
Well,
us
all
these
of that
pictures, and I'm
was
sorry it took
itself.
us so long to get to them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, no worries. You guys have my number now. So, I mean, if you want to call or email back, I can give you the information for the contact, and you can do with it what you will. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to ease into it, because I know that's a big undertaking, and maybe, I don't know, definitely have to power up in your your ayahuasca and all your other stuff, and just you definitely have to prepare before you go there. The in between the buildings there, if you see the three buildings connected, we stood in the parking lot. There's a parking lot that you can pay by the hour for parking your car. You need to, in between that one picture you just had, it is super dark and the light doesn't seem to go through the in between the connections between the building, and that is super creepy between those buildings. It was weird looking up at it from the parking level up. I felt this real creepy sense just looking into those two connections of the three buildings. I feel like, I don't know. I don't feel like a lot of light gets into those areas.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I can see that definitely.
only
And it's
darkness
funny you
there.
call it the in between. That's what they call it on Stranger Things too. The in between.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we definitely have to strengthen
They call it
ourselves
the upside down, don't
and,
they?
and level up. They call it the upside down.
the upside
That's true.
down.
Yeah, okay,
but
sorry.
there are
I got-
books. There
yeah.
are books and movies out there that call a place where there's portals and to other worlds an in between place, because it's not really this reality, and you see that whenever you look at the Eliza Lamb situation. When she was in that elevator, she was her consciousness was transported to a different place, I think, where there was lava on the floor and all kinds of weird things were appearing in front of her, and she really fully was immersed in this other reality as she's getting on and off the elevator. I really think that's what's happening there, and I think that's the danger of the Cecil, is that it it makes you see reality differently than it actually is, or it tries to anyway. And we have to have like a consciousness of steel in order to not fall for the traps that it lays for people.
Yeah, I feel that as well.
Well, I think with Eliza Lamb, was it schizophrenia that she had?
No,
right?
she had bipolar disorder, but which usually
bipolar.
Well, usually bipolar disorder doesn't come with any kind of psychosis. I mean, even after she stopped taking her meds, I mean, yeah, she might have a manic episode, but straight up psychosis to that degree, that's more like schizophrenia or being on some kind of hallucinogen or being, I hate to put it this way, but being influenced by, another being or human or otherwise.
Well, wasn't it in the documentary, or maybe it was something else we were watching? There seems to be missing footage. Like, if you look at the timestamp, it seems like they cut the footage out when she's in the elevator. So it begs the question, was she running from a hallucination or an interdimensional, or was she running from an actual person? But I know one thing for sure, that water tower, you have to have two guys lift that cover. It's heavy. It weighs a lot. There's no way that she lifted that up, took all her clothes off, dunked herself in there, and then closed that lid.
She's a tiny little thing. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like people that have mental, like bipolar or some sort of, their chemistry is different in their brain. I feel that they're misunderstood a lot of times, that they have an openness to a spiritual side that the rest of us don't, because their veils are a little bit different and their filters in their mind. So I'm not surprised that she had a better, like, that kind of experience with her history that she has. A lot of people that I used to think were crazy and crazy talk and that had mental problems or medical problems with their like schizophrenia or just manics or whatnot, and they would speak of things, and then you're like, oh, BS. And then when I awoken and I realized, oh crap, the crap that they're saying is actually true. It's all the things I believe now. So I really think that lends to that aspect of it, and I'm not surprised that she, maybe saw things because of her condition.
What nationality is Eliza Lamb?
She was Korean, I believe.
Is she Korean?
I think so.
Okay, if she's Korean, that's interesting.
No, Chinese Canadian.
Oh, she's Chinese. Okay.
Oh, well, that's
okay.
Chinese Canadian.
Because in Korea, they have something called the elevator game. And I don't know if we talked about this on a previous show or not. I guess after we're done with the call, we'll get into the elevator game. Yeah. But it came to mind because you see her pushing all these different buttons in a particular manner. And like right here, it looks like she's talking to somebody, but she also looks like she's kind of in a psychedelic trance.
Yes.
It's really weird. They found her in the kitchen. They found her in the basement. They found her running all over the place.
Oh, the cameras, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I just thought of a possibility here. What if ayahuasca and things like that are actually a deterrent against this kind of interference with someone's brain patterns that cause this aberrant behavior? Whether it's the Night Stalker wanting to kill women, whether it's Eliza Lamb seeing stuff that's not there and then, somehow making her way upstairs and all that, that all of these instances have to do with I noticed something, a pattern of behavior in all of I was looking at all the suicides, all the homicides, all the things that had happened at the Cecil, and it seems to me there's a pattern here. People who are typically normal for all intents and purposes, like they don't want to hurt other people, they're essentially good people and they try to do the right thing, they hurt themselves. People that are antisocial, that want to hurt people but know they can't get away with it, are somehow told by whatever energy is around this place that it is totally acceptable to be violent with other people, to hurt other people, that you basically either, it's almost like an ownership thing where, oh, well, you are, or a video game rather, like that's a better way to put it. It's almost like people think they're in a video game and that they can just do whatever they want to other people. And that's why there's so many homicides. There's so many suicides, so many different things that happen to people that are just terrible things. It's not just people hurting other people. It's people hurting themselves, which is also very strange. But I think they're trying to blame this death, in particular, Eliza Lamb's death, on hurting yourself, when I don't think it was her hurting herself at all. She didn't give herself a rectal prolapse.
No, and she didn't lock herself in the water tower either.
Hell no.
You know what's interesting about this video that's on the screen is the timestamp has been blurred out.
Right.
Because
why would they need
there's
to do
a
that?
huge skip in the timestamp when she opens the door and she's outside of the elevator and inside. And I wonder if it shows somebody else chasing her.
Or somebody that's involved in invoking whatever being is there and present whenever they do sacrifice her up on the roof is going to drag her down the hall and take her upstairs.
And her name is Lamb too.
Or portals have different time thing. Time as we know it too. When portals open, do we know what happens to time? It could also, twist time, lose time. So who knows as well too. I feel like, time is as we know it is far different than what actual time is, or lack thereof. So who knows about that? That's interesting that time is kind of twisted in her video thing too. I feel like it's an archonic portal that's feeding off the loosh of everyone that goes in there. Like
the loosh is
maybe just amplify whatever you go in with.
Backward.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
People call it a cheesy movie, but I kind of like it. The Blair Witch 2. Do you remember we watched that?
Good, yeah.
A couple months ago.
I didn't like the first one, but I like that one. Yeah.
Spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen it, that wants to see it. But essentially, they do this whole demonic ritual, and they've got all their cameras there, and they tear up their cameras and all kinds of stuff like that. And they're remembering events differently than how they actually happened. And at the end, you find out, they wound up doing these murderous rituals and everything that they were seeing was happening in a completely different way. Time was jumping in different directions. On the video itself, the video was skipping from 11 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. back to 11 p.m. And skipping in very weird ways like this video does. So maybe there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I never thought about that. So I guess when we get out there, if we go, I'm still not 100% sure if I want to go. But if we get out there, we'll definitely face down whatever darkness that's in there. So
yeah. I don't know. That place is. I definitely. There's a lot of things going on, and I'm not sure. Like for instance, you guys are, strong, sound minds, good-hearted. If that place manipulates you or amplifies, because there's a lot of desolate people that go there for whatever reasons over the years and lure people to there, and it amplifies whatever. Let's say you have some sick evil desire, like these people that prey on the poor and do horrible things to them, but then they bring them in, and then that just fuels their lust of bloodshed or whatever. I wonder if it amplifies whatever you bring, or it instantly brings out the bad in you. So I'm not quite sure. I don't know enough about it, but I often thought, what does this place? So some places are amplification. If you're good, you're just going to be good. It won't affect you in that way. And then other people are, if you're bad, then you're going to be even worse being there.
I found that to be the case with psychedelics, which is why we stopped talking about ayahuasca so much, because ayahuasca really brings out what's inside of you already. It can heal you, it can make you better, but that's only if you want to be healed and all that. But it can help you justify doing horrible things. And so that same energy, I think, is what you're referring to in this place. Does it just bring out what's already inside, or does it actually engulf you in some kind of darkness or something like that? That's interesting. I mean, I guess until we get there and get in that space, it's we won't know for sure, but it'll be one hell of an experience. I know that for sure. I remember somebody saying, "Why the hell would you want to go, do an ayahuasca experience in such darkness?" And it's like, well, because we have to face it down. We're the light. That's what we do.
And you know what I just figured out just from listening to this conversation that we're all three having right now? I just realized ayahuasca is a protective against mind manipulation in that place. I am fully convinced now. The fact that we're going to be on ayahuasca is just going to protect us against dark energies interfering, because we always have a firewall up. If we've got that up, we're going to have a firewall up. We're going to have all kinds of other things going that I'm not even going to mention on air, because the enemy doesn't need to know, and they're listening too. So
no, that's true. Yeah, we have things that we do to create.
Yeah, we're going to be
spaces
doing all
that
kinds of
are
things.
untouchable. Yeah.
So I'm not the least bit worried, but I do think it's going to be a difficult experience, perhaps, but I have no doubt in my mind that we're going to succeed.
Well, for many, many, many years, I've been working with ayahuasca DMT for the purpose of trying to get further and further outside of my body and still be able to maintain my consciousness, still be able to remember who I am, navigate the experience. And in the 25 years I've been doing psychedelics, I've always been able to differentiate what's part of the psychedelic experience and what is in this physical reality. When we get there, I think that strength and that experience is going to be really, really important, because I think we're going to get hit with a lot of dark things, and being able to differentiate what's there and what's not, what's in in the spiritual and what's in the physical is going to be of the utmost importance. So, I didn't know the show was going to go in this direction today, but
really,
I mean, I guess the energies are just saying, hey, it's time. It's time to go.
You guys got to get your shit together and just go.
Yeah. So we'll brew some ayahuasca, do several.
Yeah,
I think we need to do at least 8 to 10 experiences here at home.
Yeah.
Recharge ourselves, strengthen ourselves, all of that before we even think about doing that.
What about I will tell you about that off air, because I just realized I don't want to say that on air.
Okay.
But yeah, I just had a revelation about something. So.
Okay.
Do you want to?
How do you want me to get contact you guys?
I'm sorry.
Oh, can you say that again?
I said, how do you want me to give you the contact info? Do you want me to email it, or do you want to call me back and have me give it to you off air?
If you can email it, but we've got your number, so we can give you a call as well. And yeah, we can talk a little bit more in depth
about
off air,
certain aspects of it. Yeah. So wonderful.
Awesome. I'm so glad we connected. Thank you so much. And
that's.
I mean, I have to be frank. I was trying to avoid this.
I know you have, and maybe
I've been kind of trying to avoid it, and it's just like the energies are just like, no, Chris, it's time to go.
And
it's time to go.
And I'm like, have been telling all right, us that too.
Let's go.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah, I said he's avoiding this because he's nervous about having to confront this, but I feel like there's a reason we were there. We happened to be out in LA just looking at stuff and going down Hollywood, and we're like, hey, dawned on me, let's go to Cecil. And then I thought about you guys the whole time I was there. And I just think there are no coincidences, and I think all this, divine intervention or whatnot is because I meant to give you this information, because there's something that needs to be completed or done or that you guys are supposed to do there.
Oh, I just got
Let's
chills.
do it.
I just got chills just
Let's
now.
do it.
Let's do
time.
it. It's time.
Yeah, we've been sharpening our swords enough. You know what's funny? Right here, look. That sign?
That sign? What does that sign say, guys?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
This is when we were living in Washington.
This is way back.
And we're walking by the Cecil, and there's a big sign that says Las Vegas.
Before Vegas was even a thought in our minds.
Yeah. Creepy,
it was
creepy.
Crazy.
Awesome.
All right.
I've got your first name from your email, but I'm not sure if you want me to use it, so I will just refer to you as Elephant Tusks. Whoa.
I
did
know. I
not
just I
expect that.
I got chills over and over and over again during that conversation.
Okay. Yeah. No.
We need to have a deep conversation.
Yeah,
off air.
I'm upfront with my tribe. I've been avoiding this because I am not sure about it, and it's a huge endeavor. It's going to be extremely challenging. It's going to be extremely challenging to stay focused, to not get pulled by the darkness, to keep okay. You see these two right here. You can see us walking right by them. It's on the ground. It's coming up here. There's two little markers that say Cecil Hotel. And within those markers, you just feel this right there. There's one behind Emily right over there. And then there's another one right over here. So you're muted.
Oh yeah, I didn't ever even touch those with my feet. I walked right over them.
Yeah,
deliberately.
but as soon as you walk in this little vortex here, it feels like a vortex.
Everybody's crossing their arms like this because we do that when we want to protect ourselves.
That's a good point. I didn't even
the body
notice
language
that.
everybody's
Sort of about money,
experiencing
but
is
really
very
not really about other
nervous,
stuff.
very jittery.
But he told me, he's like,
Here,
do
can you
you
stand
live in
over
a
here?
French hotel? And I was like, I don't think so. I was like, I guess the building I live in could have some French elements, but no, I lived over there. But he was concerned that I lived here because what he told me, and this was a year before this happened, he said that place is the center of everything. So the girl who died, who was in the hot water heater, her name is Elisa Lamb. When that happened, it created a tuberculosis outbreak. Or I don't know if it created it, but it was at the same exact time.
Oh, wow.
And the test for tuberculosis is called Lamb Elisa.
Oh, that's weird.
Right?
That is weird.
So what is going on here? But when I heard about this, look, I was equally relieved and terrified because there's something magnetic about this hotel. That
Well, I felt it as soon as we walked up. I felt this energy.
When I lived here, because I used to go to this restaurant here. We can walk down here. It's now
like a
closed.
jaggedy
This restaurant and market I used to go to down here. I used to always want to walk by this, but not because I liked it, but like you can't help but think there's a weird energy here, right? And so that was like, James somehow knew something about this hotel. And when she died, I was like, remember I told you that when I moved away, I felt like I was getting away from something? Like there's a part of me that feels like if I hadn't moved away and I did, I might have been the one. Not her. I don't know if I can't say that for sure or whatever, but I was running away from something when I left here. And then when that happened, I was like, woo! I escaped it. I escaped it. But what I found out afterwards is that Aleister Crowley used to live in that hotel.
Oh.
Richard Ramirez lived in that hotel when he
Oh
was
my
fucking
God.
doing his Night Stalker killing stuff.
No
right?
shit.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And that
Seriously?
hotel, people have been since the beginning, like for the past 100 years, committing suicide in that
from
hotel. So there's something there. There's something there's something there that is, according to what James told me when he thought I was living in a French hotel, some kind of vortex that is causing all of the problems here in this realm.
Right.
Is there
Coming from that hotel.
coming from that hotel?
Well, you know what's funny is that's what Ghostbusters was based on. It was all coming
New
from that
York,
one
like, yeah,
in New York
yeah.
from that one hotel building.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a hotel; it was a condo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I got away from here, like I was relieved. I felt like I had escaped something, and then this happened afterwards. The other thing that's weird about this hotel is there's been movies made about this hotel before that happened, and the exact thing that happened in those movies. There's a Japanese movie called Dark Water, and there's another French movie from a long time ago called.
You okay? Because
There's a big big trucks pull into there, like stuff like that.
You're so cute.
But
See,
it
there
looks
you
like
go.
It's been here a long time.
It
They
says
couldn't afford
danger
it.
right there.
Okay, so oh man,
I was looking at the history of Skid
This
Row,
is-
and it's really messed up.
This is
like-
okay. Well, okay. Do you want to go ahead with that?
No, I was just- I was just saying,
Let me
I-
say this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the chain of events that happened here, are kind of starting to connect now.
Me too.
So we got married in 2012. We went to Mount Shasta. And then we came back. 2017. We went to Egypt in May.
Well, yeah, it was
of
March.
2018.
It was March of 2018.
This was March of 2018.
Yeah.
Okay. We go to William Whitecrow's funeral
Mm-hmm.
in Mount Shasta. We're called back over there.
Mm-hmm.
We go back down to LA. We hang out with Emily Moyer.
Uh-huh.
We decide on a whim to go to Mexico because you've never had any real Mexican food. She takes us on this tour here to the Cecil. You've got Las Vegas, really big, on the sign that I just showed a minute ago.
Uh-huh.
She's basically talking about, everything that happened at the Cecil, how this is the epicenter of everything.
Yep. All the evil.
We go to the passport office with just driver's licenses, get passports within 2.5 hours,
That was awesome.
which is unheard of.
That is unheard of.
We go to Mexico, we get you some enchiladas, and then within a matter of like 3 weeks, we're on an airplane going to Egypt.
Yeah, within like
2 weeks, something like that.
It was maybe 3.
It was White Crow's
just
funeral.
because,
Yeah, because I wasn't even thinking about getting a passport or doing anything like that.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, since we got passports, let's go to Egypt.
Yeah.
And the ayahuasca was saying, go to Egypt, go to Egypt, go to Egypt. And we weren't even planning on doing anything in Egypt. But we had taken some ayahuasca with us just in case.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, everything started opening for us in Egypt. And we're like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. I mean, the
So
doors started opening
then-
up for us, yeah.
Coming back full circle, we decide for some reason to move to Las Vegas.
Yes.
Las Vegas happens to have a pyramid. We go and do a couple of rituals at the Luxor,
Right, exactly.
closing down portals.
Exactly.
Now, going back full circle to the Cecil,
Coming all the way back around.
right. There's something to this chain of events that almost seems like fate.
Oh my God. Did we just say fate at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like it has to be done.
Okay, yeah.
So
It does. We're
It
in
has
agreement
to be done.
about this. Yeah.
And we went to go meet Emily just to go hang out with Emily. We had no idea
she was going to take
she was
us
going
to
to take
Skid
us to
Row.
the Cecil or anything like that.
Yeah.
I had heard of the Eliza Lamb case, but I never really looked into it. I didn't make the connection while we were there until she brought it up. I didn't know about the tuberculosis outbreak. I didn't know about the treatment that was called Lamb Eliza.
I had heard of it.
I remember what we were
barely.
doing at the time of the Eliza Lamb situation, though, because it was that when Chris Dorner, do you remember that name?
Chris Dorner.
Chris Dorner. He was a former LAPD, and he went on a shooting spree against LAPD.
Oh, yeah, that cop thing.
This
that
happened about 3 or 4 days after Eliza
Yeah,
Lamb disappeared.
within days, maybe even
So,
2 days.
yeah,
I think it was 2 days.
Yeah.
Let me check.
So we had the Eliza Lamb thing that her parents flew out from Canada and started doing a news briefings trying to find her. All of a sudden, media blackout on this, and they switched over to the Chris Dorner thing. I wasn't aware of this at the time, but I remember we were watching the Chris Dorner thing unfolding, and that was weird in and of itself. And this happened just a few blocks away from the Cecil. So it's almost like the Chris Dorner thing was like this cover up for this particular event to kind of take the focus off of the news focus off of this event here and move it over to something else.
Well, they had to leave her there until Tuesday, right?
Yeah. And then they found her next Tuesday, as was written in Latin.
In spray paint. On the
next to the
roof.
water tower.
Next to the water tower. This is getting really deep, you guys, and that poor girl's spirit's going to be there. And I
think there's going to be a lot of things there.
There's going to be a lot of things there.
But here's the thing. Okay, so when we were in Egypt, Crowley went to the pyramid, and the interesting thing is Ra had pointed out that Crowley went about the same time that we did, only 100 years prior, give or take a few years. And he's like, hey, Crowley went down there and did this and that with his wife. He didn't tell me until after we got back.
Yeah.
But we kind of, went and did that in the pyramid.
Right.
When we did that in the pyramid, we created the firewall around the sarcophagus And there were these beings standing outside looking, and they were upset that they couldn't get past a firewall. So we start describing these beings, and somebody says, hey, look at Aaron Donahue's remote viewing of the 72 demons of the Goetia. What you're describing looks exactly like what Aaron Donahue remote viewed and drew out to be the 72 demons of the Goetia. So I thought they were just initially grays, and that's it. But I remember hearing Aaron Donahue on Art Bell. I think it was George Norrie. I don't know who was interviewing him, Art Bell or George Norrie, like several years prior to that. The remote viewer guy, Ed Dames, was on. And I remember I got one of the remote viewing classes from Ed Dames. And Aaron Donahue was a student of Ed Dames. And they were kind of going back and forth on Coast. And George Norrie, or I think it was Art Bell who interviewed him actually. Or was George Norrie? I don't remember. But he was like, I just don't trust you. You're a Satanist. You're this and that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Aaron Donahue just had this really creepy vibe. But he was on like the History Channel or something like that. And they hid one of the producers somewhere, assigned her a target number, and he remote viewed exactly where she was. Like right there, like on live TV. So proving that like remote viewing like has something, actually works. So when you really think about it, we have been face to face with Crowley. We've been face to face with the 72 demons of the Goetia. We've been face to face with all of these dark energies. And leading right back to the Cecil, I think we can go face to face with them again.
Oh yeah, we are the authority in all of these cases because we're programmers.
It's just weird how this is all connecting.
It is all
and
connecting.
it's connecting in hindsight. Like this is, when we were walking here, I never thought ever that we would be looking at this place and going, this is a dark portal that needs to be closed down. I never thought that.
I just realized something. It could be not just because you hear about people having horrible experiences in ayahuasca because the setting is terrible and the environment's terrible. And I get that. However, we have each other, and we have all the experiences of the last 15 years built up to where we trust each other in situations like this. 1,000%. I trust you 1,000%. You trust me 1,000%. And when we're in those kinds of situations, we are like one. We are one unit that, we can read each other's minds even. It's really, pretty cool because we did it in Egypt. This is going to require that on a very intense level in order to block out the outside influences that are going to try to get in on an energetic and spiritual level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
So, we got to be...
I'm still kind of blown away with the chain of events.
I know, me too. Because everything's lining up to where we have to do this.
On a whim, go down to LA. On a whim, go get passports. On a whim, go down to Mexico to get you some real enchiladas. And then 3 weeks later, we're in Egypt.
Well, because a couple of days after we came home from all of that, you got online just literally right after an ayahuasca journey. While you were still actually in it, which was like, I was like, what are you doing? Because I'd never seen him be so forceful about something before, but he was buying the tickets to go to Egypt right then. Like, do not pass go, do not collect $200. That's literally word for word what he said. When he got the message during an ayahuasca experience, it's time to go to Egypt.
It wasn't a message, it was a gnosis.
Yeah, it was like a gnosis.
And that's what I've been waiting for.
A message from your subconscious.
Yeah, that's what I've been waiting for from the Cecil, but I think I've been purposely blocking it out. But it just keeps on knocking on my door, saying, come on, dude. It's time. It's time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, coming back full circle. And then Las Vegas. What are the chances?
I know.
That there's going to be a sign that says Las Vegas. So we walk right by. And it's like, first you got to go through Vegas, then you'll come back to the Cecil.
If we're reading all the signs everywhere,
it's creepy.
If we're reading all the signs
it's creepy
everywhere,
synchronistic
that are creepily synchronistic, we have to also look at the COV thing, that was on the wall at the pyramid.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
this, it's like two instances where it's foreshadowing the future in a huge and very personal way for us. Because, the first one affected everybody, but the second one affected us personally. And it's almost like this area was calling to us and saying, you know what? After you go to Vegas, you're gonna start to realize
you heard Emily a little while ago in the clip. She says, I used to come here all the time. It's almost like this place was calling. This place was calling.
Yeah.
This place was calling.
Mm-hmm. And that was its hello. I've been waiting for you. Oh, you're just gonna walk by? All right. Well, we'll see you in a few years.
Let's go do it.
Let's do it.
Let's show this prehistoric bitch how we do things downtown. So,
I love that.
The answer, are you a god?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I'm glad we got that.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a god?
Through and
yes.
through.
All right.
We all have that spark within us that, if you're listening to this show and you've made it this far, you've probably got such a spark within you that once you find that mission, that thing you're supposed to do, nothing else matters.
Yeah, we've got a few more callers, but
yeah,
I'm just.
I need to decompress.
I need to process this and decompress.
Yeah, me too. I gotta
go down and brew some Aya.
Yeah, me
too. And get in that space because.
Yeah. This is intense.
I'm really feeling it today.
Me too.
And I feel like that was the call.
Me too. So if you guys wouldn't mind calling back on our next show, we're probably going to do another one tomorrow night.
Yeah. We'll do another open line show.
Either tomorrow night
we need
or
to process this.
Yeah.
Because there's too many coincidences,
Way.
too many breadcrumbs that we really need to process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hate to disconnect from the show, but I got a lot of meditation that I need to do and preparation, and I gotta go into the realm at least once over the next couple of days and just get some preliminary feelings about what's going on. So I know you need another surgery coming up, but you're going to be doing an injection into your SI joint that's going to give you about 3 months of relief. So do we go during that 3-month period?
I think we should.
When you're feeling okay, or do we wait for the surgery?
Oh no, that's going to be. It's going to work because it worked last time and it worked beautifully. But it took a few weeks for it to really work. However, if we go whenever I think we should go, we should, have enough time to do what we want to do what we need to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So, kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time is going to be. Sorry to end the show so abruptly, but
yeah,
I'm really feeling this. I'm feeling this in my stomach. I'm feeling this in my chest. I'm feeling this in my throat. It's almost like a choking sensation.
Oh, mine feels like it's electric.
And a pulling.
Yeah. Mine feels like it's electric.
So I need to figure this out. Kiss the one you love right now. You never know the last time is going to be, and we'll see you very soon, even further.
Beyond the veil.
Love you guys, gals.
We love you guys.
Hey everyone, Chris Geo here. Just wanted to remind you that if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably getting a condensed version of the show. A link is going to pop up here on the left, taking you straight to patreon.com/BTV Tribe, where you can get the full shows. It's as little as $3 a month. And the reason is it helps us to overcome the YouTube censorship, the shadow banning, and also stay in touch with our BTV Tribe. See you there at